I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I want to say thank you all the people that are out there that came out tonight to be here to help educate us. We appreciate it. The first item is the acceptance of minutes from our September 4th meeting. Do we have any corrections?
Yes,
Go ahead,
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Havlik.
I have handed the corrections to Mrs. Latour, so there were two.
Two. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, can I take consensus on the minutes with the corrections that Ms. Havlik did?
Well, wasn't there some abstaining?
Okay.
Yes, we don't have quorum.
Oh, we don't?
Yes. Okay, we'll wait.
All right, we'll come back.
We don't
Yeah.
have quorum.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, thank you. All right, then we'll go to item 3, which is presentation of the 2018-2019 school improvement plans.
So I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of a background before all of our principals presented. This year we introduced a new template, and you all received those on Friday afternoon. I want to say that the principals did a wonderful job really personalizing their schools and making their schools come to life. You know, the template is the same in that it asks for the same information. It gives a little bit of an opportunity for the principals to provide a summary, to review the data, and then speak to student outcome indicators, adult outcome indicators, and then community partnerships, and then strategies used and how they're going to communicate the plan. Even though the template was the same, every school's take on it is a little bit different, and it should be because their schools are all unique. Their student populations are unique, and they have things that are specific to their own school that they're going to want to address through their school improvement plans. That's not to say that, you know, of course, we're all working on academic achievement. We're all working on social, emotional, school climate, integration of technology and STEM opportunities. But each school has a vibrant, diverse population of their own that they want to address through their school improvement plans. So we prepared 2 slides because it's nearly impossible for every school principal to go through their plans page by page. We would be here forever. And it's not to say that we don't want them to, but that's why we provided all the plans to you in their entirety. And so they have 2 slides that they'll present to, and they're anchor points. They're very brief. You have a copy of the presentation in front of you, as well as it being presented on the board behind me, and they will bring their schools to life. They will tell their school's story and then have an opportunity for you to ask any questions. We have asked the principals to be brief in their remarks because there are 12 schools to get through this evening. So I kind of give them the time limit of about 5 to 7 minutes with then questions that you may have if you have them. They will go in order, starting with the K-2 schools or pre-K through 2 schools all the way through the high school. And you know, I hope that through this process you get a great sense of where each school is and where they're headed in the coming year. Okay? So first up is Cookhill.
So good evening, everyone. Basically, just to share a little bit of the background of Cookhill School, has currently about 360 students, including the Wallingford Integrated Preschool. Along with the pre-K2 school, altogether, it's about 360 students. We celebrated great success and pride last year with our first grade teacher, Erin Berthold, being the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year. It brought a lot of fame and fortune to our school. The students felt that, you know, there were some students who wanted to know why they weren't on TV again and again, and certainly Erin was gifted with a certain amount of money that she is able to use in our school for students and learning in our school. So we all benefited from that, along with sharing her pride. We implemented the second step curriculum in all classes last year to ensure a Tier 1 model for instruction in social emotional learning. We also implemented a revised intervention model last year. So our 3 interventionists worked very hard to revise their intervention blocks and work together collaboratively so that all students who struggle and needed Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention would be met by a reading specialist. So rather than having para support to cover some of those groups, the reading specialists made sure they were available for all 3 grade levels. And they did a, which is very appropriate for kindergarten, they did a centers approach. So they went from one center with one interventionist to another, with another interventionist to a third, with a third interventionist within their 45-minute cycle, touching on all of the parts of foundational early literacy skills. So that was really exciting. Another really exciting thing we did last year was they were able to collaborate and partner with the EL bilingual teachers, and we provide what's called a language and literacy morning meeting, 3 of the 6 days a week, where all students who speak another language who are very limited in language come together to have a morning meeting together. And that has been really, really powerful because we have kids in kindergarten who are able to see their friends in 2nd grade, sometimes sisters and brothers. It has really opened up our school and helped with the speaking and listening that goes along with the EL bilingual learning. We have some goals this year are focused on STAR and ERLA reading data. Obviously still show a need for continued improvement. Interestingly, our STAR data does not always match our ERLA data. Our STAR data, especially in K and 1, can be pretty strong by the end of the year, but ERLA data sometimes isn't matching, and so we need to look more closely on at how we measure their learning and whether or not we are measuring them in the true sense of the word, or whether we have some subjective things going on with our ERLA reading. In math, we are measuring through STAR Math and computational fluency, and we will continue to focus on math achievement this year. I've actually asked the teachers to consider writing a math SLO this year. Most of the teachers over the last few years have always focused on reading, and I would like them to focus on math, especially with the addition of the math coach and the literacy coach in the building. I've noticed that I have a lot of interest in that area. Office referrals for recess still show the need to teach our 4 to 8-year-olds how to solve problems, how to cope, and especially self-regulation. We are seeing more and more cases of students who are having a really difficult time in a structured setting. Pretty much how I spend most of my day. I think that we need to, come together, we need to collaborate, and we need to look for ways to support them, but also the other learners in the classroom, because it's very difficult for other parents to feel that their child's education might be interrupted by someone else in the classroom. So we have to really get out there and be able to help these parents understand that. Last Link's data shows that our school's doing a great job in bilingual and EL instruction, especially in speaking, but also in the other overall scores. The speaking scores, interestingly enough, 67% of the kindergartners come in needing speaking because they're very, very low, but by 1st grade, they're not at that low point anymore. They're 67% closer to proficient. So it's pretty exciting with the speaking, how far they come in just 1 year. And lastly, I have been studying the truancy attendance and also school nurse visitation data, because I noticed that the school nurses have this great program where you can actually study the number of children who are visiting, but also the number of minutes that they're staying there for and the frequent flyers. And it's really interesting because where some of them do have ongoing health needs, some of them are avoiding work. And so I want to really learn more about that and how we can best support them so that we can have increased student engagement.
Great.
So we will be looking at all of our STAR data, early literacy, reading, and math. We will look at our Last Links data, ERLA data, and then we will also look at office referrals, as I just spoke to, attendance and nurse visits. The teachers will be working on posting their learning targets and instructional alignment with all of the indicators, so that not only are they posting them, but what I noticed last year is that they would post them but maybe not articulate them. And in a K-2 school, it's really important that they're articulating them to the students 2 or 3 times during their lesson, so the students really are understanding what they're going to know and be able to do at the end of that lesson. So we're working on that. We're also working on increasing student achievement and having teachers take a part in that with their SLOs and their IAGDs, and also paying attention, having teachers pay attention to attendance and health summary reports. So usually at the school level, the teacher might not take part in that meeting for a student who has many, many absences, but this year I'd like to have the teacher take part in that meeting so she gets to know the family a little bit better and reaches out to them, and then perhaps we can help that child to get to school. Lastly, the community involvement. We have a lot of community involvement at Cook Hill School. We have family literacy in our school where we have quite a few families. Just today had quite a few families in visiting and working with both Leona, the adult educator, and Rosemary, the child educator, and they create quite a bond there. We also tomorrow morning are having a bilingual EL open house in our school, so we will have them all back in tomorrow. We look at parent attendance and engagement at all school events. We also look at success with community projects. So we have K-Kids, and we have a lot of community service projects going on throughout the year, and the children are very, very excited about them. They're very proud of them, and so we look at those types of things to see how we are reaching out into the community. We also will look carefully at the climate surveys and ways that we can increase the welcome feeling that you feel when you come into the school, and make everyone feel that it's a great place to learn. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Christine, do you ever capture any data on the visits to the nurse if children are complaining of a stomach ache or hungry?
Yes, so all of that data, we can definitely tell whether it's stomach aches. We do have kids who come for breakfast or come in for something to eat. We offer them something to eat. We purchase extra food to have there for them. We don't necessarily track that, though. We track stomach aches, but we don't necessarily track whether or not somebody says they have breakfast or not. We just believe them and offer them something.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christina Kiley, principal of Stevens Elementary School.
Good
I want to
evening.
start by sharing a little background. EC Stevens is a pre-K to 2 school. We have a total of 322 students and 79 staff members. We also house the K2 autism program in our building, which has 15 students, and those students push into lunch and recess and special areas. Stevens is really diverse, and we have a range of different social, emotional, socioeconomic, linguistic, and academic needs. We have a total of 12 languages being spoken by different students in our school, and I think that variety and that diversity makes us a very special place, and really allows us to kind of program and put interventions in place to meet everyone where they are. We have some really active building-based committees that I wanted to talk about. Our climate committee, which is comprised of parents and staff members, ranging from general ed teachers to special area teachers to paraeducators. And we meet on a regular basis to not only really dissect the climate survey data, but also to talk about what we can do to move forward. We even have some subcommittees off that look at safety patrol, a mentor program that we have in place. So that's one of our committees that I did want to touch upon. I think it helps us to move forward and get to the places we want to go. Another really active building-based committee that we have at Stevens is our SRBI core committee. So we meet every day 3, and that's a committee that looks at students, and we would look at students in need of additional supports either with behavior or with academics, and certainly looking at the data as well as what's already been put in place. And as a group, we work to really kind of analyze that data and put in additional strategies so we can give students the supports that they need to be the most successful. Our safety committee at Stevens is also very active. We have, I have 3 parent reps, as well as regular participation from the police and fire department, as well as a wide variety of staff members from regular ed, special areas, my ELL teacher, paraeducators, and we meet on a regular basis to really look at safety inside and out. We also take a look at mental health and the initiatives that are put in place to move forward and to support students in that area. As a school, we're on our 2nd year of the implementation of Second Step. This is a curriculum that I think is really important for the students at Stevens. As I get down below and talk about the rationale, you'll see that our age group and population is really in need of building those skills, those self-regulation skills, those coping skills, and those problem-solving skills. So, you know, I oftentimes will be brought into a situation where I have a student that is at recess and another student takes away the Frisbee they were playing with, and so their response is to hit the student. So while we're working really hard to teach them a replacement behavior, we're also working really hard to grow their skill set in terms of coping skills, problem-solving skills, and really building their toolbox so when they're in a situation like that at recess, they can kind of move through it in the proper way. I did include in there my recess referrals because I think that speaks to what I'm sharing right here, and the fact that the 4 to 8-year-olds that make up Stevens School really need direct instruction in this area. So I'm pleased that we're in our 2nd year of Second Step. We're also in our 2nd year with our partnership with Meriden Child Guidance, which is also another support we have to help students who have experienced trauma and who are in need of interventions to move them forward so they can experience the most success. At Stevens, we really believe in working together as a team. We are frequently calling parents in to work with our school team as they're a vital part of that team, having students be present at those meetings so we can move forward together. Just a little bit of the rationale for the goals. We're working to see that all students increase their achievement in reading and in math, as well as with their social and emotional skills. Talking a little bit about the reading and math data. Last year's data, so the end of last year, so spring data for STAR, showed that our SGP fell within the average range for all grade levels in reading and for grade 1 and 2 in math. The ERLA data does demonstrate a need for us to focus on bringing those skills in isolation that students have demonstrated on STAR into context. So that's a big focus that we have this year moving forward because our ERLA data is in need of growth, and knowing that students are coming with those skills in isolation is where we are and what we need to work off as a springboard, and really, again, helping those students to bring those skills into context. When we get to the second slide, I'll talk about some strategies that we have in place to do that for the students as well as for the teachers. 2017 recess referral data, which I shared a little earlier, shows us that our population of 4 to 8-year-olds is really in need of growing their skills with problem solving, coping, and self-regulation so that they can successfully engage in an unstructured setting such as recess. Our school, community, and home partnerships are essential. I have a little African proverb here. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we believe in working together so we can go as far as we can. Looking at the stakeholders, I want to start talking about the student and thinking about how we're going to achieve those goals of increasing achievement in reading and math and increasing those social and emotional skills. So some of the ways that we're going to measure are through our STAR early literacy reading and math assessments, our comp-fluency assessment in math, the ERLA, the LAS, and office referrals as an important measure of data, as well as attendance. Some strategies that we're going to implement this year to help achieve those goals are, number one, students being able to articulate their learning. So me going into a classroom and being able to sit down with a kindergarten student, first grade student, pre-K student, second grade student, and ask them what they're learning and have them be able to articulate that learning. In addition, targeted instruction in the content areas to provide those tier 1 interventions. ELL and bilingual and intervention are going to do as much push-in as possible to not only work with the students on their caseloads, but to really have teachers and other students in the classroom benefit. We utilize golden rulers at Stevens, so our overarching rule is to follow the golden rule and to treat others the way you want to be treated. And so the golden rulers just kind of capture those acts of respect that student to student, staff to staff, staff to student, and they're read aloud each day on the morning announcements. We're going to continue with those second step lessons. We do those every day too as a whole building, and we have a co-teach model for that. And we utilize the restorative practices. So when something happens and there's a situation between 2 students or 2 staff, we really work to repair that relationship and come up with replacement behavior so that it doesn't happen again the next day or the next week or month. We're also going to continue with our trauma group in partnership with Married and Child Guidance, and our anger management groups in partnership with the Wallingford Police Department, which we did last year for 2 of our grade levels. Looking at the teacher as the stakeholder, teacher goals are going to be measured through the observations that I do as well as the walkthroughs. Their progress will also be measured through their SLO and their specific IAGDs. We're also going to look at the data, formative and summative, for the students in their classroom around their caseload. Something that I'm going to implement this year is at each staff meeting, we're going to do a little monthly reflection on their focus area. So as part of their evaluation process, they come up with a focus area from the CCT rubric, and I'm not going to collect it, but I'm going to ask that they spend about 5 minutes just reflecting on their focus area, jotting some notes down so that they can be kind of more aware of where they are with that area of focus and where they may need to go next. It is discussed at the mid-year and end of the year conference as well as at the goal setting, but I think it's important that they're reflecting on that throughout the year. We also have job embedded PD that will occur throughout the year, and I'm looking for them to be engaged and actively participating in those PD opportunities. And I'm going to do a little check-in on climate, a check-in sheet, because the climate survey will not be going out this year, but will go out next year. I do want to get some data from staff, so I'm going to do a check-in sheet just to get a sense of kind of where we are and where we need to go. Some strategies to help achieve the goals. Our teachers are going to be posting those learning targets, providing targeted instruction, doing a lot of collaboration with special ed, bilingual, ELL, and intervention, and receiving job-embedded PD through the venues of our grade level meetings, staff meetings. At each staff meeting, I have a new learning portion. So that's a time where we are going to be able to embed a lot of great professional growth opportunities. Some of the facilitators will include our math and literacy coach, our married and child guidance social worker, and our school-based mental health professionals. So we have the social worker and psychologists that'll do some of those professional growth opportunities as well. And lastly, the community. We're going to measure the community-based goals through participation in family literacy, through attendance at our breakfast connections, which is something we are going to do 4 times this year. It's a time in the morning where parents can come and have a light breakfast, casual conversations with their children, get to know other people in the school. Sometimes we have a theme, but it's very casual, and then when the bell rings, the parents wave goodbye, their children go to class, and parents go off onto their daily schedules. So I do track the attendance for that, started that last year, and I'm going to continue that and look to see the attendance increase. Same thing with family night events. We do a family math night and a family reading night, and we'll look to see attendance increase from last year's attendance logs to this year's. PTO and PTAC attendance will also be tracked on a monthly basis, and we'll look for an increase in that. And just as I mentioned for staff, I'm going to do a parent check-in climate survey just with a couple of pieces that tie to school connectedness to get a sense of where we are this year instead of waiting until the official climate survey goes out next year. strategies that are going to be in place to really help to make those goals happen and master those goals are the breakfast connections. We also have a Twitter account, which a lot of teachers are able to post and capture things that happen throughout the school day. The reading nights that I spoke about, community partnerships that we have. 3M is one that I was just working with them today on a donation of some great supplies, and they work with us, as does the Wallingford Public Library and several other community partners that we have. We have a Caring Kids Club, which orchestrates different drives and different fundraising events to better the community. And I also do weekly e-blasts to keep parents in the know about the things that are happening at Stevens School. So that's Stevens School in a nutshell.
All right.
Questions?
Okay, I just have a quick question for
Sure.
you. It just made me think about it when you talked a lot about the social emotional. The board's very happy and excited that we were able to get 4 full-time social workers into the schools. And I would love to know, like, what things you're able to do now that you weren't able to do before to, I don't know if you have time to go into all that.
Sure,
but
sure.
And I'm sorry I didn't ask that of Christine either, but if anybody has that coming up, that'd be great to hear.
So I can tell you that already my social worker, along with my psychologist, are going to do a little PD tied to positive supports for behavior at Wednesday staff meeting. In addition, she's already been able to meet with many families and she's had parents sign permission for her to informally work with students. So this is awesome because we're able to be proactive, and instead of waiting and being reactive when a child's behaviors become, really intense, and we're being proactive. So what she's been able to do in many different situations when she's been in attendance in the parent meetings is she's been able to get their permission for informal counseling, where she's able to meet with that student either individually or in a small group to be able to kind of address some of those skills like self-regulation or friendship. We had one student that really needed some work on how to interact with friends in the class and how to communicate with them. So she's able to work with him as well as another student in the classroom to address just that. So those are a few things, but already I could feel it, and I just want to say thank you because it does matter. It does make a difference. Teachers are really excited to be able to just go to her and say, hey, I have a student. Can we sit down? Can we chat? Or can you come and take a peek and offer me some strategies? So we're really just trying to tighten up the protocol so that she doesn't end up with 30 kids that she's going to, to check in on. So we're bringing that into our SRBI process, and she has a certain form where teachers are going to articulate what tier 1 strategies they've had in place, and then she will follow up, observe, meet with the teacher, and really work together on kind of a plan with next steps.
All right.
But huge thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vada.
When you mentioned the SRBI committee, who comprises that?
On our core SRBI committee, we have myself, our social worker, our school psychologist, we have our special education teacher, our speech pathologist, we have a general ed teacher, we have an interventionist, we have our bilingual teacher, and we have our ELL teacher. That's who my committee consists of this year for
and
core.
basically, when they meet, are student names brought to them?
Yes. So when the student comes to core, they have already gone through grade level SRBI, which is where the grade level team and myself meet. And we first, student comes up, we discuss an area of focus, we come up with a SMART goal, we come up with some strategies to put in place to address that goal, that area of focus. Teacher goes, collects, implements those strategies, collects the data. We come back in 4 to 6 weeks, and if failure to make adequate progress has taken place, then we will either at that point adjust the interventions or adjust the goal. We come back again, we look at the data. If we see that the adequate progress that we were looking for has not been made, at that point we would move the child to core, where more specialists are around the table. The teacher would come with their data, with what they've done, and we would kind of discuss and put in additional interventions to help that child succeed.
So I would imagine the student's teacher is in that group from the beginning.
Correct. They're in the grade level group, and they are also become part of the core team for that student.
Okay. Now one more question.
Sure.
On your summary here that we received, You probably don't have it in front of you, but
I do.
I just need you to take me through that first group and make me understand the number. I should know this probably, but it's been a while.
Okay.
On the star reading data, page 2, and by the way, I'm glad the pages are numbered. Explain the significance of 48 SGP 5358.
So I wanted to give a snapshot of the data, and this is historical data from the end of last year, so from the spring. So basically, that is the grade level median. 40 to 60 is the average that we're looking we're looking for students to fall between an SGP of 40 and 60. So what I did is I got the grade level median, so you can see that for kindergarten, the grade level median, that SGP for the grade level was 48.
And it should be between 40 and 60.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't know.
And that's, as I move into this year and set my goals, I'm looking again for students to fall within a 40 to 60 SGP. However, if you look down at the IRLA, we still have certainly some room to go and grow, which is why I talked about having students really take those skills in isolation and bring them into context.
No, wait, before you go on, the 82%, 74%, is that what you're talking about?
Correct. That was at the end of last year.
Okay. Now, to make further confuse everybody, if we go back to Christine's, on your page 3, I'm just trying to get correlation here. You have that first box. Those are the same, those are measuring the same things that Christina just talked about, correct? The median is 40 to 60 for kindergarten, grade 1. And where those bar graphs, those bars are, tells us where the average fell for kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2. No.
I was measuring the percent of students, that were at or above benchmark.
All right, so let's take the kindergarten. That's like 58 or something?
Yep.
So would you mind explaining that again then? 58?
So 58% of the kindergarten students were reading at or above benchmark at the end of kindergarten on this assessment.
So you're both talking about the same test, but you're giving us
Yes.
a
we look
different
at it in
result.
Different
two
data's
ways.
different way.
Okay. So those numbers on the left do represent percentages. Okay. Thank you.
Wait, Ms. Faccio, you had a question? Anybody else have a question? Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Reed. I'm the principal at Highland School. I'm going to start with our background of our school. The school motto is Highland School is a great place to learn, and everyone at our school works to make that happen. Our vision statement includes information about educating the whole child, and that's what we work on as a building. We are a pre-K through 2 school. I'm going to give a shout out right now to my pre-K staff because they worked very, very hard the last 2 years, and we did receive our NIAC accreditation, and that was a lot of work. We
very
work to educate the whole child. So we're looking not only at the academics, but also the social and emotional learning. And as my colleagues have already stated, and you'll probably hear some more, for pre-K through grade 2 students, it has to be intentionally taught. They have to know and learn what those skills are. At Highland this year, we are implementing second step, full scale in the building, meaning that all classrooms are doing it. Last year, we had a couple of teachers pilot it, but this year everybody's doing it. I also have day 2. Every day 2 in the morning, we have classroom teachers working with a co-teacher, not everyone, but almost everyone, and they're sharing and co-teaching those lessons. So the whole building is doing it at the same time. Most of the lessons are aligned, like at the beginning of the year, being friendship, and later on in the year, they'll all be working on empathy. I have a responsive classroom and second step committee. We just met actually today to plan our town meetings, and this is where we tie in those themes of kindness and friendship and empathy for the whole school. And we have a visual display because our age students need to be able to not only hear it, but able to see it as a visual reminder throughout their day. So we're working as a team, whole school, for helping students understand, how to be kind, how to take turns, how do you handle a conflict, like recess or lunch. That it has to be intentionally taught. So that's what we're going to be working on for that. And then, of course, we're working on building those foundational skills in reading and numeracy. Also this year, I'm excited about our science. We have our new science program, and teachers are working very collaboratively with our librarian, who actually has a background in science, for extension activities and a lot of hands-on activities. So that will be incorporated as well. Our goals are to see growth in the areas of reading and math, also writing. Students will participate in the second step lessons, and our staff will engage in professional development. Okay, so our goals for students are going to be measured in STAR, Comp Fluency, ERLA. We'll track absenteeism and bullying referrals. Teachers will be working on their SLOs and IAGDs. We're going to ensure that instructional alignment with the unit indicators on any homework assignments that are sent out. Teachers will be utilizing school pace, using the performance tasks and house scores. And for our community, obviously parent participation at PTAC and PTO, parent conference attendance, and our safety drills. And the strategies for students will be small group instruction. You'll see that there are two strategies that are the same for both teachers and students, small group instruction and learning targets. For the students, small group instruction is their ability to be in a group where they're gonna get something that they need, specifically that they need. The learning targets are very important for students to understand why it is that they're learning something. For teachers, small group instruction is part of their job. It's what they need to do to ensure that all students are going to meet with success, and the learning targets really helps focus the teacher on what the important elements of that lesson are. Students are also going to participate in second step, and will continue to utilize responsive classroom strategies like morning meeting, closing circle. Our town meetings are very popular. Teachers are participating in the weekly second step lessons, and they're going to continue to collaborate with our literacy and math coach. And as far as our community, we have our well-established curriculum nights that are extremely well attended. Our Veterans Day celebration is now in year 18. We have K-Kids Club that works, their first meeting is next week. They have many, many fun activities that the students participate in, and we're going to continue to work with the Wallingford PD and Wallingford Fire Department.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
Ms. Raccio?
Will you be doing any type of climate interaction for parents? I know some of the schools do the glows and grows, and we just heard Christina doing the informal parent survey during the year.
We have, I have a climate committee that will be meeting in 2 weeks. I can certainly bring it by them and see what they'd like. Obviously, we're not required to do a climate survey this year, but if the committee feels that we need to get a little touchstone of how things are doing, we certainly can do that.
Ms. Vada?
Okay, Vicki, the numbers.
Okay? All right, I did not
Yours
include.
are totally different than the others now.
Right, I didn't
You
include.
people doing this on purpose?
It's still the same assessment, though.
Well, I don't see ERLA.
I didn't put ERLA in. I have ERLA, but I didn't put it in.
Okay. So
I
it's
have.
not me, okay, good.
I have the STAR data, and what I did not include SGP. Well, I wasn't sure. We have a small box here, so I didn't know exactly how much data.
You mean
to
literally?
squeeze in. Literally,
Okay.
yes. So I put in the STAR, and I just put in the number of students that were at or above grade level at the end of the year, and then, yeah, that's what I have. And then I had the one verified active bullying and 2.1% chronic absenteeism.
Okay. All right, that explains that. One more question, and I'll let everybody go on. One of your things for the teachers' goals, you said instructional alignment with unit indicators. Now, how do you how do you monitor that? Just through observation, or are lesson plans handed into you with
No.
objectives on it?
So
No
this,
lesson
that
plan?
is something that's new this year, and so I've already had discussions during collaboration meetings with each grade level team about the unit indicators. So if a teacher is creating their own assignment or classroom work, they're responsible for going back and checking that unit to make sure that what they're presenting to students to do is aligned with what's in the unit. Many of the math and language arts units have plenty of resources, and you'll probably hear that next week. So if a teacher is taking an assignment or homework assignment, something that they're going to make into a homework assignment from the units, it's already aligned. They don't need to put the unit indicator on it. If they're using something that they've created themselves, they need to make sure that it aligns. If they're taking something from Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest, then it's very important that they make sure it aligns, because a lot of those items, well-intentioned, but aren't aligned with Wallingford curriculum.
So how are we ensuring that that is?
So what I said to the teachers, I had that conversation with teachers, and so
I'm not
if they're-
implying they're not, I'm just asking.
Yeah, so I have to see it on the paper. So when I go around for walkthroughs, if teachers have students sitting at their desks working independently on an assignment that they've created or is from someplace else, the unit indicator should be on it. If an assignment is being sent home for homework, the indicator should be on it.
I was gonna wait to the end, but as long as you're talking about this now. What knowledge do the parents have prior to report cards and seeing those indicators, or the standards or indicators that are on the report card? Both? Just standards? It's so hard to keep up with all this.
It is. The elementary report card is on the older side. So the standards that are on the report card, the indicators align to those standards, but the report card has not been updated. So part of the reason why it was decided that teachers should label student work with the proper indicator is really to have the ability to engage with the indicators on a different level, to ensure that not only do they align to the content that's in the unit, but to the rigor in which we want kids to be experiencing. Because again, like Ms. Reed said, we have many resources attached to our indicators for both English language arts and for mathematics. But there's also many teachers who are creating their own materials or finding resources elsewhere. So for those resources in particular, it's important that not only do they align to the content that's being taught within that indicator, but we really do need to look at the depth of understanding that the student will need to be successful with that. So as we do that daily in our lesson planning, in our grade level meetings where we're talking about a particular assignment, we're having conversations about what is that indicator measure and what do the students need to be successful to master that indicator. And as we continue to do that and become more comfortable with our indicators in terms of what they're measuring and what student work looks like as it relates to that indicator, we're working on, in my office, on updating the student report card so that it's a one-to-one correspondence. Right now, several indicators point to standards that are on the report card.
Yeah.
And eventually we will move towards a report card that kind of lists out each indicator and each graduation standard.
All right, that sounds great. But now, will parents also have knowledge of those
That's part of the
prior
process.
to the report card,
Yep.
so that they know what their child is working toward?
Yep. So as we look at part of doing this year as well, not only posting the learning targets on the board, but also labeling our student work, is so that parents can begin to see what their children are working on. All of our information is online, at open houses, it's being discussed. And then one of the first opportunities parents will have to speak with teachers is coming up this month in October for parent-teacher conferences, where we look at what we're asking our students to do within our units and what it looks like from a mastery
All right, so
perspective.
are teachers required at open houses, which I believe have probably already taken place, to go over these indicators with parents, to let them know these are the things that we're striving for this year in grade 3? I mean, maybe you can't go through all of them, but more sort of give a general
And that was part of the discussion too, as principals meet with parents at open house, to bring that to everyone's attention so that people know what to look for, what it means, so that it's not just an arbitrary
Right, because you don't want
label.
them to get that report card and say, you know, where did this all come from?
Right.
You know what I mean? They should know in advance if they take the interest to look.
The other
Find out.
thing that I know we have spoken about is that in the past, we had those little program guides by
Yeah.
grade level. It was premature to bring those back just yet, because we need to go through this
I
whole
love those.
process. But those are gonna be coming back in some form. We're not sure what form yet, but we wanna make sure that they do come back. But you can understand this is a process.
How did you know I wanted you to say that? You could read my mind, huh?
I was actually just having this conversation with the coordinators today.
I'm
a couple
very
stopped
happy to
by,
hear
so-
that. I
But we
think those
couldn't
were
do
very
it.
good.
You can understand, we had to take it
Yep.
in steps, because if we put something out and then had to pull it back, that wouldn't have been good.
Those are very good, okay.
Ms. Havlick?
So, and if you need the originals, I still have them. Yeah, no.
Any more
Certain-
questions?
Certain things remain in the archives forever. When you're moving to the indicators on the report cards, when is that gonna happen? Because I find that to be very helpful, you know, going back to previous testing, like the CMTs and whatever. Sometimes it was great to be able to pick out what your student wasn't so great on or was doing well on, and then you could kind of emphasize that in the home setting. And so I think it would be helpful on the report cards when you're looking at those indicators that maybe you could give a little extra helping hand to your student at home if it looks like they're not getting a concept. So do we have an idea of when they might be on the report card?
Well, our goal is to have it sooner rather than later. Right now, they're broader. Our indicators are quite specific. So what you see on the elementary report card are broader buckets. And so when you're meeting with parents and you're talking to them, you kind of will speak to specifically, under reads fluently, what does that mean and where their child is at. And so over the last 2 years, with the indicators going through revision, they're finally at the point in which, through a lot of discussion and feedback from our instructors, that they are stable. And so therefore, it makes sense to go back and make our report card more specific.
I mean, the CMT was good for
Yeah.
really picking out the strands. The
Yep.
SBAC is not
Not
as
so good.
specific,
Mhm.
and I find that that's difficult
It
for
is.
some
Agreed.
to really hone in on what the student is not understanding. It's a little too broad,
Mm-hmm.
so, okay.
All right, any more questions? Thank you. And Ms. Corso, would you like to take over?
No, go ahead. Have at it. You're good. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, good evening, folks. My name is Rob Arcero. I am the proud principal of Moses Y. Beach Elementary School. So I'm going to say a quick thank you to the board members. I'm celebrating a bit of a milestone in that this is my 10th, now double digits, presentation to the Board of Ed, celebrating here in Wallingford, and it's been a great ride. I'm proud to share that our campus, and I'll try to highlight some differences to my other pre-K2 colleagues, is celebrating a milestone also, like Ms. Reed mentioned, that we earned our NIAC accreditation. We were in our 3rd year. We were one of the original sites cited for the Smart Start grant, and a big shout out to my pre-K staff for that collaboration to making that happen. It was a pretty big deal. Moses Y, like my counterparts, consists of 4 grade levels, pre-K through 2. And you'll hear that we often emphasize that early childhood aspect when you consider the developmental range of kids from ages 4, we're talking just past toddler stride right shoes, folks, to the age of 8. Getting ready to enter their intermediate experience. So it is quite a range. 349 students total population, and I had mentioned this and referenced it at a meeting last week, and I think it really bears highlighting for the board in that as a primary building, 38% of our students are brand new walking in the front door. And as Dr. Menzo pointed out with transfer students, and that's on the rise, when you take into account 1st and 2nd grade, and I didn't have time to crunch those numbers, that's a significant percentage more. So when you hear primary principals talking about this need to return to foundational skills over and over again, kind of going back to that ground zero and setting what is that course for our primary students, that's the reason why we're the starting point, and we're proud to be so. Moses Y this past year has had an exceptionally strong climate survey, and I'm proud of that. Our results, and there's some details in the specifics of the plan, we attribute really to being in year 6 of a responsive classroom approach. I am excited, I know I have a fan there, I'm excited to be venturing into second step, because for those that are not as familiar, responsive classroom is like the umbrella in terms of a philosophical approach. And second step is going to do an excellent job of really giving teachers some specific skills and resources when it comes to targeting things like building empathy or some of those self-regulation skills, inhibitory control, self-control. And we're really excited to venture down that path as well, and I'll share some specifics about what we're doing in terms of strategies to unpack that as an approach. One specific thing that's different, I'll share an additional data point with you. You've heard STAR and ERLA referenced, and I'm particularly proud that our kindergarten teachers at Moses Y use an additional assessment referenced as passed in the plan, but it's the phonological awareness skills test, and this really breaks down these specific skills. So unlike when you're asking questions, what does SGP mean? That's student growth percentile. And again, that's growth relative to that individual student at that band. This test, however, really breaks apart the specific literacy skill that teachers are targeting. So when you get a random scale score, oftentimes that can be challenging for a teacher to understand how to take that specific number and unpack it instructionally. So a 775, what do I do with that? This test is a diagnostic measure that the grade level is using to really unpack what skills kids need. So in terms of rhyming, in terms of phoneme seg. ERLA does have specific reading skills. Yes, it does. This goes down to literally the very basic foundational blocks of literacy acquisition. And ERLA is a reading taxonomy that covers a breadth of skills. So Mike, I'm talking about the very beginning piece when we talk about literacy skills.
And STAR doesn't do that either? Oh, this is
it does. It does. It measures it, and you reference how we can look at it in different ways. So STAR can be unpacked in terms of SGP, so that's growth relative for a specific child at a specific level or band. You can also talk about it in terms of where the child is in transitional stages of reading development, which is the snapshots for data that I included in my plan. And then again, you can disaggregate that data right down to the specific kiddo to see where they fall on that spectrum. So there are a lot of ways to dice it when you take a look at it, but we are using lots of different diagnostic measures in addition to some of the standard ones that are used district-wide. Climate data I referenced earlier. One of the things that I pointed out as a rationale for goal setting in terms of climate data is that it does focus on some of that self-regulation, executive functioning piece. So like my colleague, Mrs. Friend pointed out, with that number of students that's coming into their very first formal experience in school, navigating a structured learning environment is something that really has risen to the top priority. And to reference your question, Patty, the additional staffing has been tremendous. Well needed, and in terms of trying to help unpack for some of those students on an informal nature and to build those connections, bridges with families, build capacity within staff, and some direct support, of course, with students. So for our stakeholder groups, our goal measurement looks very similar to some of my colleagues. Again, STAR early literacy for kindergarten and first grade. First grade does transition at a time where a child is capable and eligible, can transition into STAR reading. Additionally, we also have the PASS, which focuses on phonemic awareness. We utilize STAR math and computational fluency, focusing on math as a content area, and also have ERLA and Lost Links data, which I included in my report as well. Similar to one of my colleagues, We were pleased in terms of an approach to our bilingual students. You will see that from kindergarten to second grade, those numbers do take a downward trend in terms of kids that are still at the beginning level, and that's a good thing. We will be utilizing interim climate surveys. So the question that was asked earlier, Moses Y does in fact have plans to do so. That'll be done informally through a Google form, as well as utilizing some of those second step assessments. In full transparency, we're newer to the scene with second step, so we're excited to start to unpack some of those kits to see what the assessments are there. The reason I think it's especially important for the second step piece is when we talk about climate-related data and we simply point to attendance, remember the age that we serve. So from 4 to 8, who are we really assessing when we're talking about student climate? You're talking about the parents. We want to look at building self-regulation, and that's building capacity within students. So my hope is to make a tighter or stronger connection within some of these assessments to talk to kids about how they're feeling, talk to teachers about what they're witnessing in terms of kids' ability to navigate relationships with peers, and just being able to access the curriculum in terms of their own regulation. Teachers, again, some similar goals being measured, SLOs, so our student learning objectives, our indicators of academic growth and development. So that's principals working with teachers in terms of that goal setting, getting into some of that number crunching on the individual classroom level, talking about what the cohort looks like and what they need. And that's something, of course, I'm intimately involved with, working through with teachers. My own observations and walkthroughs, talking about learning targets and how those aligned indicators that were referenced earlier are playing out when it comes to actual instruction. School Pace is a connection to ERLA. That's basically the data warehouse where the ERLA scores live. So again, that conversation is ongoing through grade level meetings and data analysis that happens weekly throughout the year. And finally, our community piece. We enjoy at Moses Y strong parent participation. My PTO, and for those of you that were there Friday, as we celebrated Jess Harris's finalist status, and the State Department was hosted at Moses Y, you could see the presence on the part of parents and really their pride in terms of the spread that they put out. So we're really pleased about that. We are talking about navigating an opportunity, looking at combined PTACs for both Rock Hill and Moses Y, and that's something we're looking to explore later this month in terms of bringing the two school communities together. But again, we're really proud that the events that we host and the participation that we see at Moses Y has been exceptionally strong and continues to be so. We track our attendance at events, our open house events, our conferences. Teachers also build in, as a part of their own action plans, that parent engagement piece and how they're engaging parents, not on a surface level in terms of just communicating basic information, but how they can have parents be partners in school, in the classroom, and just keep them in the loop in terms of awareness.
All right. Any questions? Ms. Raccio?
Rob, I just want to commend you on what your teachers have done with the PAST program. I think that it's probably out of the elementary things that I've looked at all weekend that I've spent a lot of time on. It is probably one of the most proactive things that is a gift to families and to students.
Thank you.
Because it's not just reactive when something's a red flag in ERLA or STAR. We're getting at it at the core in kindergarten, and I think that is probably the greatest gift out of full-day kindergarten that we would not have been able to do in a half-day program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Vada?
How successful do you think you're going to be to get the two PTACs together?
You know, that's a conversation that's really bigger than the principal.
Okay.
You know, there's a culture and a climate to each school. There's a lot of overlap on our side in terms of PTAC and PTO. So it's a big conversation. I do know that for my PTAC last year, they were instrumental in terms of what Moses Y was doing for next steps for outdoor education with our Kinderwoods program, and cited it as something that they wanted to have an intimate impact on the instructional nature of what was happening at Moses Y. So I think that will be next steps in terms of Mrs. Carlson and I, meeting with both groups to talk about how those two align. And if anything, the combination really is to bridge the school experience for 90 to 100 families that may in fact overlap. So that's a big conversation that needs to take place with those folks involved. We have revisited it several times throughout, but again, it depends on the
If
makeup
it
of
doesn't
the
happen,
group.
I have no problem with that.
Keep trying.
Other
Okay.
questions?
No more? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Mary Poison, principal of Mary G. Fritz Elementary School. I actually moved from last on the list to first on the list, so that's pretty exciting. Like that. Anyway, little background on our school. Actually, we've shrunk a little bit this year. Currently, I have 306 students in the building. We house grades 3 through 5. I also have the activities-based classroom in our building with 4 students currently, as well as Harvest Park K2 and 3-5. Our academic focus has been over the last few years with literacy and numeracy, and we continue to have that focus this school year. I'm excited to tell you that this year we are going to be implementing, and we've already currently started, the Second Step program throughout the building. Last year we had 2 teachers per grade level that had piloted the program, and currently we are fully implementing in a collaborative effort. And last year for our professional development focus, teachers had really expressed a need for support with coaching and having what we call satellite opportunities. So staff would have a day of release where they would be able to go into a classroom to witness model lessons, have a pre-brief and then a debrief to take a look at the instructional strategies that were applied, as well as resources that were used, and really a big effort to try to differentiate and create more strategy group instruction. So currently, as we move into this school year, again, we're still looking for all students to continue to achieve in numeracy and literacy, making growth, as well as our second step lessons, increasing those this year to the full school. We have every grade level teacher is currently working collaboratively with a specialist, a special ed teacher, or an interventionist, our school psych, school social worker, speech language pathologist. We are incorporating everybody. While we do the bulk of our lessons on a day 6 in order to accommodate so that we have collaborative efforts, we also have a few staff that are working on day 1. So day 6 would be the primary day, followed by day 1. So when we have the specialists in the building, they can collaborate with classroom teachers so that everybody has a partner. And that, I have to say, so far has really been quite an interesting experience. I've been trying to make myself between 2 classrooms. So I'll start half of the lesson in one classroom at the same grade level and move into the other. So it's been great for me because I take the language of whatever's being instructed and I embed that in my morning announcements daily. And I actually felt today like my efforts have really been effective, because in the busyness of getting kids out and safely on buses to Nature's Classroom, morning announcements didn't happen because I'm the one that does them every day. And one 3rd grader said, "Mrs. Poison, I didn't hear you on the announcements this morning." I said, okay, then it's getting us somewhere, because it is a great opportunity to really embed a lot of the practices that we're using daily. And then it will continue this year. Our focus for professional development still is to increase the level of instructional strategies and looking at resources that we can use to help guide our instruction. But we also are looking to do a deeper dig into the data and what does it tell us as we look at formative and summative assessments and using some of the resources. For example, STAR. Last year we began this journey at the end of the year looking more at the state standards and looking at each student where they fall within those bands to help us to determine next steps for instruction. So that will be a focus for our PD this year. Again, as our stakeholders, our students, again, you'll hear similar information about the assessments that we're using, but we do STAR reading and math, ERLA, which we just completed those assessments last week. We'll continue with computational fluency, last links, We have performance tasks by unit that will be something that teachers will be using as a form of measurement and review for future instruction. And we also look carefully at our attendance and office referrals as well. Some of the ways that we will help students in terms of getting to those goals that we have set for them is, again, posting learning targets. It sounds very simple, but it is a really effective strategy, provided that teachers are revisiting throughout the lesson and even looking at the end of a lesson to ensure students have some type of a response as to what they did learn about that learning target, carrying it over into the next day, maybe part of your morning meeting. It may be the part of your lesson that begins your activities to be sure you're checking in for understanding. Differentiated instruction, as I mentioned earlier, is still a key focus for us, really looking at using the data to help us to determine those groups for strategy instruction. We have done a lot more with responsive classroom over the last year, and this year I started off our school year with a focus. Let your choices reflect your hopes and dreams. That's throughout our building. We have students who are sharing daily what their hopes and dreams are for the new academic year. And we have teachers that have also joined in on the morning announcements with students as well to really keep that focus on how are we moving each day towards the goals that we're setting for ourselves. Our High Five Heroes is something that we embedded a few years ago, but we have really amped that up a little bit more. Daily now, I am reading 3 high fives. Students earn those for demonstrating good character. Things like kind words, kind actions, being responsible, respectful, persevering, honesty, acceptance. Those are kinds of things that kids will be rewarded for. And we use we have a board that's in one of our hallways where all those are hung daily. And we actually kind of, again, creating a positive culture. This past summer, we spent a lot of time revamping our bulletin boards and really creating more of a uniform look to the building and, you know, a positive environment. So kids actually, the bulletin board has the handprints on it, which was kind of neat. So those get hung up, and as the board gets filled in, the school gets to earn a reward together. And currently, the kids are working towards having lunch with a friend, which is a very important thing. They get to go and have unassigned seating and sit with their buddies who they might not have in their classroom. We also implemented the buddy bench last year, just before the end of the school year, and that continues to be a focus to help students to be able to accept others and certainly create some new friendships. Our teachers will continue. We're working currently on putting together our SLOs for the school year. That will be something I'll continue to check in with teachers, how they're moving forward and progressing, using our formative and summative assessments that we have to help guide our instruction, walkthroughs as well, and classroom observations. Again, targeting small group instruction, really looking to meet the needs and personalize learning for students. Also collaborating with grade level colleagues. We do this regularly. Last year we had great success with being able to have at each grade level staff that support our students, whether it be special education or intervention, ELL, and certainly our social work and school psychologist as well. And for our community, we do have a very strong population of parents that participate in events and frequent the building. Our conference attendance rate is very high. We tend to have a great turnout for open house as well. Our PTO and PTAC attendance, it wavers. We tend to start off pretty strong in the fall, I think, and then we have pockets of families that will continue on throughout the year as need, as well as the events come up. We do have a strong family literacy participation rate as well. This year we haven't firmed up what we're going to do with that, but there always is some great activity going on that really includes everybody. Last year we had an awesome program, but unfortunately Mother Nature did not help us out. We'd never made it to the yard goats last year because of that microburst after many hours of planning. But we did come through and had a great in-house field trip for the kids just prior to the end of the school year. So that was very disappointing, but the work behind it was really effective. And I know the kids did gain from that. And we'll continue to attract attendance, encourage new opportunities for parents to come and join us. I'm very transparent with my communication. I send out a weekly Gator Gazette to families, as well as I have a daily bulletin I focus on with my staff so that all information that they need to know is there. We have also incorporated the use of the home links. I shared this last week at open house. We copied all those for families, whether it's Spanish, English version, so those will go home at the conclusion of each second step lesson. And we as well will do a climate survey. We haven't orchestrated that yet, but when I meet with my climate committee, we'll put something together that we can gain some information and feedback as we go through the year.
All right. I do have a question. You talked earlier about a PD for teachers with the coaches, the math coaches, and I'm just trying to figure out what does that look like? Are you having the coaches do it and the classroom teacher watch, or are classroom teachers leaving, watching other classroom teachers in the building? Or are they leaving the building and watching other classroom teachers in different buildings?
Great question. So it is on our own campus, the training.
Okay.
And typically what we were looking for was to have a classroom teacher that would offer their classroom up. They would be the person that would be either providing the small group instruction, or they might be doing the daily 5 math activities that start the day. So it was a co-taught model. So for example, 3rd grade last year, they were looking to see what small group instruction looked like for reading. So literacy coach was the one who was modeling that. Classroom teacher who was sharing their classroom was doing a strategy group as well. So it was an opportunity for other staff members to come into the classroom and witness what it looks like, sounds like, feels like as that activity is going on.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Havlick?
Yes, I'm looking at your, this is a concern of mine across the board, the chronic absenteeism. I see the number of students and the number of days. Do we have more specific data as to what the reasons were for the chronic absences?
Absolutely. So we have several students that have been experiencing a lot of anxiety, and that was part of what was causing the absences. It was when monthly, I spent a lot of time calling families. A couple of things that I actually shared at open house last week was sometimes families don't realize when a student is out ill. They think when they call in to the main office number that that's all set. They still have to follow up with a written note. So oftentimes as I'm looking at the monthly absentee data, I'll call out to families to find out why are there unexcused absences, or why are there so many absences. So we've had some great success stories because of that. For example, I had a student last year who was coming in tardy pretty much daily, and as we were working with the student and the family, some of it was related to mom not getting child to school on time, but the other part was significant anxiety that was diagnosed. We ended up working with the student to find out what was something that would really promote the child coming to school on time, and funny enough, the child liked to do morning announcements. So we put the child on morning announcements every day, and that child is starting the school year, is not doing the morning announcements by choice, but has not been tardy once. So it really is those conversations, but oftentimes it really has boiled down to anxiety. So whether we bring family in and encourage a 504 plan, other things like that, but it's really looking outside, the box. What are the other ways that we can really tap into getting kids to be engaged, to want to come in, and helping families to know that we can put a plan in place that supports their needs too, because oftentimes families are struggling to figure out how do I get past that anxious moment with the child to be able to get them into school.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many, many conversations with families about that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Vada?
Okay, Mary, because you're number one, you're going to get the question.
Okay.
Do you feel confident that these tests that we collected data with, it's the STAR and the EARLA, which help our instruction and help us personalize instruction, are you comfortable enough that those measures prepare our children for the SBACs? Because our scores aren't the greatest, and I'm wondering, are we aligned? Is one thing helping the other, or are we missing something in there? Because we seem to be what you guys are doing is just amazing. I'm glad I taught many years earlier. And I don't know how they do it all, but you want to see the fruits of your labor too.
Right. I think the tests, to be honest with you, are a measure of good instruction. Truly, following curriculum with fidelity is really the key to helping our students be successful. So the key with some of these assessments, especially STAR, oftentimes we have kids with test anxiety. That impacts the score ultimately. We have kids that do struggle with some reading, so when they're taking a math assessment, even though they might have the audio, that still can be an impact. I do think those formative measures that we do with students and really looking at creating strategy groups and understanding what kids need, using that data for sure, because we all have to have a consistent data, but I think it's the curriculum and following it with fidelity is what is the greatest impact for students.
With the SBAT. I mean, does our curriculum match? Maybe I should ask Mrs. Lador this.
Yes, it does.
They are in line, correct?
They are.
Right.
Actually, what we do is look very similar to the buildings. They'll look at the individual student data. We do the same thing. And you know, some of the things that we wonder, we wonder that very same question to make sure that we're instructing aligned to our standards, and the standards are aligned with the Smarter Balance. We look to see the level of rigor in terms of what we're doing with our kids. We look at classroom data across the district to see all of our third grade teachers, what is the range of students' scores in terms of proficiency on the SBA. So these are all the things that we're doing, and we look at how STAR can or cannot be a predictor to Smarter Balance. So these are the things that we do in conjunction with, and it is a piece of the puzzle, and I know that it's frustrating when we don't see that impact in our Smarter Balance scores based on the hard work that we're seeing every day that's being done in the classroom and the good instruction that's being provided and the good student work that's happening. And these are the things that we continue to work on. I agree with Mrs. Poison, fidelity is incredibly important. That's part of the reason why, having being articulate about our learning targets, making sure students are understanding what that is and why they're learning it, looking at the level of rigor of the work that students are doing to make sure it's aligned with some of the things that they're seeing. Sometimes it's vocabulary. It could be as simple as that, or how a question is asked. And back with the CMT, you were given very targeted information about a particular area that we were either strong in or weak in. Everybody remembers Strand 25 questions where you had to, go back and look and try to figure out how to best solve it. You were very narrow in your scope of I know we need to work on this. Unfortunately, right now, we don't get that same level of information back from our Smarter Balance assessments. We have very, very, very broad buckets. And we continue to work with our teaching staff, our administrative staff, our curriculum staff to look at how we can best address our curriculum and the standards within to ensure that our students are meeting the standards necessary to be successful, to achieve in reading and math. And sometimes that comes through in the STAR assessment and the SBA assessment, and sometimes we're missing the mark somewhere. And so we continually strive to find out how we can better instruct our students so that they have the tools in their toolbox to be successful, not just on the Smarter Balance, but with the curriculum in general.
Ms. Raccio?
Mayor, is there anything that can be done proactively to improve the foundational skills, similar to like Rob is doing the PAST test in the kindergarten, so that's more information that flows forward, which I'm going to be looking for like first and second grade as this goes on, because I think it's an awesome trend. We'll share. I think it's an awesome trend, so I'm just wondering from your perspective if, previous experiences or anything, is there anything we could do on a more proactive?
In terms of
For the
phonics
foundational
piece.
skills to, instead of just reacting to the STAR and ERLA.
I think systemically, having some type of a program or supports for students to have, consistent instruction in phonemic awareness and phonics is really important. I know that when we take in kids now, I know our third grade staff is very busy trying to shore up some gaps in students with phonics. It has been a discussion, I know, at the district level in terms of what would we use. Is there a program? There have been some adjustments in curriculum this year. There still is a cry, I think, from teachers to need more support in terms of what is a resource that could be consistently provided to all students prior to coming into the intermediate level, because that is something that I know some staff struggle with in terms of we have kids still in 4th and 5th grade that have gaps. So it is really looking at what foundational skills can be provided pre-K to consistently that allows for the 3-5 to have success. You'll still always have some kids that will need that, but the number of students needing that would lessen, I think, if there were more of a fidelity of phonemic and phonics instruction.
If I
So
could just
I don't have
add-
the answer to that, but I know
I
that that
do.
is something we have talked a lot about.
I
But
think-
Mrs. Latour does.
I do. I think one of the bigger issues curricularly was that the word work, the phonics and word work, that components of our units have been in there and have been in there for several years. This year, they really mapped it out in a different way and were a lot more specific with aligned resources to ensure that everyone had a consistent approach to that word work and to that phonics. So one of our first PD opportunities of the year in September, Kay and One sat down with our coaches and with the English Language Arts coordinator to review the sequence of lessons, the resources that are aligned, so that the approach to teaching this had a consistency across the schools. And then they'll do the same in October for 2nd grade and 3rd grade. And then we'll move on from there to 4th and 5th, where you look at vocabulary and how it's approached and how it's instructed. So while it's been in the units, it is a lot more succinct and explicit now and mapped out so that there is there's consistency where it needs to be.
All right. Ms. Havlick.
Typically, students that have learning disabilities or dyslexia may be identified in grades 4 and 5. What specifically are we doing, and this is for you, Laura, to support and identify these students so that we can make sure they make adequate progress?
So we are looking at the interventions that are being used to target specifically the area of reading and or math, but primarily in reading, so that we're able to really dig a little bit deeper into the problematic areas of reading. I had met earlier last year, I met with the interventionist and Carrie, and we talked about different interventions that are available, for example, in phonics, in fluency, in comprehension. The trend has gone away from the not evaluating till 4th and 5th grade and looking more at those CERBI interventions and how they are targeted specifically to that child's area of weakness, so we can then determine the learning disability in the targeted area.
I just want to make sure that we're supporting those students and that they're identified so that going forward, I mean, we had, looking back at the data we had last year, we had a large number of students that were identified that came in, like 100 students that were having special needs that we needed to address. And so those are some of the things that I look at, and I'm also very keen on making sure that we are integrating more technology in with this population across the board.
And we are definitely doing that, and we talked last year about the training of assistive technology team in district, and this year we are rolling out the team. They'll be going into the schools and working with the school teams to do observations and to offer a variety of assistive technology tools that are available not just to special ed children, but to any
Right,
child
no,
that
any
might
child.
require it.
Right.
And really staying up to task on the new things that are becoming available out there, because it's constantly
Right.
evolving.
I mean, just utilizing that, because again, I'll go back to what I've mentioned in the past. When we're looking at SBAC and some of the tests that are administered via computer, are we testing for computer skills or for content knowledge? And
Right.
that's what worries me.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that our students have that, the computer skills that they need so that they can navigate through those tests.
You good? Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good
I am
evening.
Christina Sagnella, principal of Parker Farms, and I am very excited to be in year 3 myself. So I only have 3 years in presenting, but it feels great to be in year 3. So when everyone asks me, how's it going? That's how I start. So a little background of where we were last year. Our academic focus, again, as you've heard before, increasing student achievement in literacy and math. Instructional focus on learning objectives, formative data, analysis of that data, satellite classroom experiences, as we just heard at some of the other schools, and strategic staff development, where it's really looking at what the staff is asking for and making sure that we're bringing that staff development opportunities to them. Really passionate about strengthening our SRBI grade level and core process. Year 2 of full implementation for us as second step school-wide. So it's been year 5 at the school, but since my start there, it was a full implementation across all of the classrooms, and this year is now year 3. So we are a little bit deeper, and I'll talk more about that shortly. We also began development of a deeper understanding of responsive classroom and second step across all settings. Teachers came to me and they said, so tell me about responsive classroom. Is it more than just morning meeting? And I was like, oh yes, it's more than just morning meeting. And so we dove in. I am a big believer in just rolling up our sleeves and looking at the text that we have in front of us, things that teachers are interested in, and diving in to learn ourselves. We don't have to wait for that sit and get professional development. We can dive in and look at some great anchor texts, and we did some book studies with our staff on that last year, responsive classroom texts that they chose, and just continuing that implementation of learning for a responsive classroom, along with sending them to PD in the summer and in the school year and day trips, and so it's been great. And also continued strength in communication and connections with families and local businesses. So this year we are continuing all of those. With our academics, we are also having a highlight in math. We are slowly seeing an increase in literacy scores, even though I'm not happy when I see 50% or 48%. I want to see 75%. But math is taking us a little longer to get there, so we will be really diving deep and pulling apart more learning in math instructionally. Continuing our instructional focus on learning objectives and that formative data with teachers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. With our SRBI action plan this year, we really dove into trying to look at how can we better our school instructionally with our SRBI process and operationally. So something as simple as fidelity to the process, teachers really coming prepared with student work to show the data behind that SMART goal that was set, and really being prepared to speak to the data and to tell the story of that child, and whether those strategies that we brainstormed as a team were actually working and what they feel that child needs, because that's really what it's about. Are they seeing, with that collaborative work with the interventionists, are they seeing those strategies work? If so, that's great. If not, we revamp those strategies and we reset that. So that's been a very big piece. And instructionally, we just talked about the flow of students moving in and out of tier 2, possibly going into tier 3, moving them back into tier 2 if they respond, because the ultimate goal is to get them back to tier 1. So we want to strengthen that tier 1 core instruction. Year 3 of full implementation for second step school-wide, including our second step, and that's what SS stands for. Our school has gone school-wide this year with the bullying program. So being that we are in year 3, we piloted the bullying program component of second step last year in 2 classrooms. And this year I purchased it for all of the classrooms. We rolled it out. It's only a 4-week unit. And so I said, kind of like you heard Mary say, I need to teach it. And so I'm one of the instructors right now in 5th grade teaching the lessons so that I can learn them. And then my social worker and full-time school psychologist, who we're very excited to have, will continue that implementation opposite day 6, which is their regular second step lesson. they will do a bullying lesson together between 3rd and 4th grade on a different day of the week. And that really gets at the heart of some of those problem-solving skills. We talk about being positively assertive and really having children see, first of all, the difference between bullying, is it or isn't it? And then how do we as the bystanders help support that, combat that? And it has been amazing in the evolution of that, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it. And again, continuing and deepening our understanding of responsive classroom and strengthening and continuing the connections with families and businesses. So, some of our student stakeholders for goals being measured. The data that is on our Parker Farms charts is the 40% or higher of SGP. So that is looking at that student's personal growth. And to me, that's really important when we're talking about a mastery-based learning. Yes, we can talk about students and where they're at proficiency levels, but I really want to know that my teachers are helping those students move. And so I'm really passionate about looking at those scores. But again, computational fluency, performance tasks, formative data. What are they doing in between testing cycles? Are they collecting data on school pace? Do they have a data binder? Do they have it tabbed off by students? And some teachers, it was a big task, and it was just get a data binder and put it under your arm and put some paper in there, and we'll work on it. Collect data and collect. You know, some teachers, you have baby steps, and some are light years ahead on school pace. But as the administrator, you have to know your teacher in order to move them. Second step and district climate surveys, recess and CAF bullying surveys. So as you heard Rob talk about, there are other surveys, and we will use them this year in implementation where we're at. We're ready for that. So we will do in October, a January, and a spring climate survey that Second Step has. We probably will tweak it a little bit, but they do have some great surveys out there. We also created, through the implementation of my social work and her work with some of the bullying lessons last year, collaboration with our recess and CAF teachers to really look at that problematic behavior during recess and lunch. And so we do have a scale that we will be using to assess our students. So the strategies to meet those goals, unpacking summative and formative data to drive that differentiated whole group and small group instruction. I love when I go in and I see a whole group lesson, and when the students break off after the teacher did the mini lesson, this group over here might have some extra sentence stems because they're our ELL population, and this group over here might have a challenge question. And so really looking, it's not just about differentiating for small group, because most of us know and understand that, but also looking at how and are we able to, or how can I support my teachers with the collaboration of the coaches to differentiate during whole group too. Supports to yield successful SRBI meetings, and again, we were talking about that through our students and how are we making sure that they meet the goals that they're at. And if they're not moving, it's really important to me that my classroom teacher is having that conversation with that interventionist, if they're already in intervention, to bring in that ELL or bilingual teacher if they're part of their world, and to say, let's brainstorm some strategies. Is this child in tier 2? Are they responding? Are they not? And really looking at that child's progress through the SRBI process. Do we need to move them to tier 3? Student-led organization. So we too have an amazing K-Kids group. We have an amazing student council, which last year I started to turn over a lot of our ownership with Second Step to them. We also have a Bulldog News Live crew where they do live broadcasts in the morning. And so like you heard Mary talking about the discussion of what the focus is for this week or this month with Second Step, I've now typed it into the teleprompter, and the students are sharing and reading it. So just a little bit of a bridge to get that student-led at this age level. We have launched a kindness campaign this year. We're very excited about it. We've done a lot with every bulletin board in the school opened up this school year with a kindness message. Teachers knew they had to have some sort of kindness theme on their bulletin boards, and the students rose to the occasion. So we've been very excited about that. We did the Say Hello, Start with Hello week last week, and I had students who I've never seen raise their head, pick their head up, and hello, Mrs. Sagnella. So really just trying to build that community and continue that. And now we're talking about with the Climate Committee moving into a gratitude campaign for the next part of our year. And again, we do create a Second Step and responsive classroom action plan. It's linked into our climate survey because we have so many components that are happening with Second Step and responsive classroom. we really have its own lens and its own document to help us monitor where we are in the depths of that. With our teachers, again, like we've heard, their SLOs and IGDs, administrative and peer-to-peer learning walks with feedback. So I'm going out on a limb, and I encourage them to take collegial visits and go and visit another teacher. This time we're going to all go together. So I'll let you know how it goes because it's happening tomorrow. And we will be visiting math classes tomorrow with the coach and a couple of teachers who felt more comfortable to walk. And so it's intimidating, and there have been a lot of nerves floating around Parker Farms, which they're not used to. They felt it when I first walked through the door, and then it's settled a little bit. So now it's back up again. But that's okay, because I said we grow when we stretch. It's my job to stretch you. So I'm excited about that. I want them to know that it's not just about feedback from me, it's feedback from each other. And again, we will be doing a Google climate survey. I sent out a question already. They're nervous. They don't want to answer a question for me in Google. They're like, she'll know. I'm like, it's set. Look, it's set. I won't. So it's okay. But even if it means my union rep has to come and share with me some concerns, that's fine. We'll work through that. But again, the strategy is to meet those goals, post and learning targets, again, with student ownership, collaboration at grade levels with all support staff, intervention, PPS staff, ELL, and bilingual to track student progress, increased collaboration with math and literacy coaches, fidelity to the SRBI process, teacher focus areas and strategic staff development. The teacher focus area is something that I've worked collaboratively with the coaches. It's really getting the teacher to identify that area that they want to grow in. Normally that would be through the lens of the coach entering into the classroom. Some of them who are a little more leery, I'm just asking them to identify that area now so that I can take that avenue to support them in your math instruction. Is it discourse? Is it your mini lesson with closure? And having them name that area and then working with them, and eventually maybe more working with the coaches. That's what we're hoping for. And again, staff appreciation and socials. And for lastly, but not least, our community stakeholders, family participation and communication. I do a weekly Bulldog Blast on Sundays. I do tweet often, and also really encouraging teacher connections. Some of my teachers do use Class Dojo, and the parents love it. They use it more for the connection, not the point part, but the connecting piece. So we're hoping to continue all of that. A Parker Farms climate survey that we will do, a glows and grows in the winter, and then again at the end of the year. And climate and community outreach and reflections from those two committees are really active in my building. But for our families, lastly, is really increasing their awareness of Second Step and what it means, and then looking at those home links. We were so excited. We added some extra questions into our climate survey, specifically about Second Step. And we had, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was roughly a high 70, low 80% of the parents that answered. We had about 85 family members that answered our survey that did know what the Second Step home links were, that felt like they helped their child, where they said that they saw the child even transfer some of those skills at home. So I shared at open house that the 17% that wasn't sure what those were, that it's my goal to decrease that, because I want them all to know what the home links were. And we talked to the children about being the teachers of those lessons so their families understand. So that's us. That's where we're at, Parker Farms.
I just want to say real quick, in order for children to be mentally, socially, emotionally healthy, you have to have a coordinated plan. And I just want to say to you and to Mary, it's awesome that you, the principals, are going in and teaching the bullying lessons. And just thank you, because it really shows that you're part of the team there.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes.
Ms. Corso.
Okay. Not necessarily specific to Parker Farms, but I did have a question because I've heard from all the schools how important communication with home is, which obviously is very, very important. And I'm hearing Class Dojo reminded me, Remind, also is another app.
Yep.
So there are so many different apps, and I have 4 children in 3 schools with a number of different apps, and I'm wondering if there's any coordinated effort across the district to decrease the amount of apps, and I, and there's pieces of each app that I like. so it's not like I have a preference for one over the other. I'm just asking, I'm just wondering if there's any coordinated.
Our first challenge is to make sure that they're all meeting the data privacy requirements from the state of Connecticut. Remind does not. So if if a district is using that, that is a challenge right now. They're in violation of the state statute. So so we're trying to work through that first to determine which ones are actually going to sign up and follow the laws that were put forth by the state of Connecticut.
That's the state of Connecticut.
Yes, that was.
Say that again?
It's the data privacy statute
Data-
that was passed July 1st, well, actually last year, January 1st, 2018. And so every district has to comply, and we have to go through every single app, every single website, anything that is going to provide student information. And it could be as simply as first name, initial, last name. There's so many layers to this. It's become somewhat of a full-time job for Karen Vayu and our administrators, to be very honest. Our administrators are working so hard on this because we have to figure it out. And teachers are innocently, setting up accounts and different things, and as soon as you do that. So to get to the meat of your answer, or to the answer, is the fact that we have to figure out which ones are going to meet that criteria. And then as a team, we actually just talked about this at central office last week. Once we can get there, we're going to figure out, okay, how can we solidify things? Because there are some that have been approved by the state of Connecticut, because what happened is the Technology Consortium, which we're fortunate that Karen is an active member of, has worked with Doug Casey from the State Department of Education, or commission on data privacy, to get some identified for the whole state, but then each district has had to go out and get its own permissions for those other companies. So that goes from Power School to IEP Direct, all of those companies, you have to have them. And we're starting to post them online because you have to make them evident to families that we have these. So every district is supposed to start posting them. We're a little bit more on the side of having done more in this area than some districts, because we're fortunate we have Karen Vayu as our Director of Technology. So yes, we are going to consolidate efforts. We just have to figure out who's going to be eligible to be considered for that consolidation.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No worries.
Ms. Faccia?
I'm wondering the cost of the student bullying program and if it would be something that we could do district-wide.
I already have.
Is it going to be in the budget? Just wait
No,
for
I
it.
purchased them last year. Every school has 2 of the kits for the mental health professionals in their building. It was a conscious decision last year when we purchased all of the classroom kits to add in and layer in the bullying instructional resources for every building to use either whole school or through the SRBI process, depending on where the school was. Because many schools have been in Second Step for quite some time. Some schools, it is their first year of implementation, so the Second Step lessons is the right first step and step forward. But I did want every school to have the bullying program as well, so they have it already.
So when they're ready, there's no additional cost to
Correct.
the individual
It's all
schools.
done.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kristen Valero, principal of Pond Hill School, and unlike many of the other people who went before me, this is day 1 of month 3. So, while there is a piece up here tonight about school background, I am learning all that I can learn from the staff, from the families, from the students. A few things that I can tell you about our schools: it's a 3-5 school that houses approximately 320 students. There is a very strong culture among students, staff, and families, and that is something that was evident the first second I walked through that door. I told everybody, you just feel it, and that is the absolute truth. Supporting students' social emotional well-being while helping them to reach their academic goals is a big priority for the staff and families of Pond Hill School. We truly believe that if the students are not there and available to learn, we're never going to see the progress, which brings in our second step. Last year it was a pilot year. 1 classroom in each grade was a pilot for second step, and this year it's full implementation in every classroom with partner teachers. My goal is to get to every classroom and be part of those lessons on the floor with the kids, sharing, listening, giving feedback. First they kind of look at me funny, but then when I start to share and we talk about things that are personal, that really kind of bring to life some of the issues that they're dealing with, they start to see me a little bit different. And that's my goal personally, is for the students to get to know me as a person, not just the principal. And then when they do have to come to see me for something, we can go back and talk about the lessons that they learned in their classroom and how that can help them to make better decisions and what things they might do different the next time. Our goals, we always want students to grow in literacy and math. And all students will be supported socially and emotionally. And I have to go back to the social worker and psychologist. They have been instrumental in really helping kids to adapt to coming back to school. Some had hard time getting back into the swing of things after the summer at home. Others coming to a new school are really having a challenging time, and how do we make friends, and they're just available and they're in the classrooms every single day. So that has been a huge help to the students, the staff, and to me. And we want families to continue to participate in school events. I couldn't believe how packed the parking lot was on open house night, so that was a good sign, and we want it to be that way every time. And then communication between home and school will continue. So how are our goals being measured? It's the same, the STAR reading and math, the IRLA, the achievement of the goals that the students are setting for themselves. That's a big push for me, is I want students to have personal goals that they're setting and then be able to articulate them and then talk about how they've worked to achieve them. So when I go into a classroom and I ask a student, so what are you working on? They can not only tell me what the learning objective is, they can say, oh, we're working on this, and they point to the board. It's really cute. But they can tell me what they're personally working on and how they're working to achieve their goals. And then computational fluency and their social emotional well-being. We're doing that through the focused learning targets, whole and small group instruction, response to second step, and through our town hall meetings, which this year are teacher and student led. And not only is it embedding the second step piece, but they're also focusing on mindfulness and having a mindful body, and how do we self-regulate. So those are some of the themes that are coming out in our town hall meetings for all of the students. As far as teachers go, it's curriculum pacing, assessment data, observations and feedback. I think conversations between all of the stakeholders is what's going to move kids forward. Looking at data is great, but the conversations and that problem solving together is where the direction that I'm pushing the staff to go in. And then of course there are SLOs and IAGDs. We're looking for focused learning targets, participation in grade level meetings, collaboration with coaches, and examining student work. We're bringing student work to the table to look at how kids are learning, how they're approaching the assignments that we're giving them, as opposed to just looking at the numbers and the SGPs and all that other great stuff. We're looking at what the kids do on a daily basis. And then in community, it's parent participation in PTAC and PTO. I am lucky to have a great PTAC and PTO partner, Ms. Kiley, and I think our first meeting was a pretty good turnout, I would say. It was my first, so I didn't know what to expect. And participation in school events, we have many of them planned throughout the year. I attended my first, the Ice Cream Social, and it was overwhelming at the amount of students and families that were in attendance. So we'd like to increase that, because there's nothing better than on that Monday when the kids come in and they say, I saw you with your daughter at the Ice Cream Social. That's really about building that community feel, and that's where the direction that we want to go in. There's weekly communication from the school. There's something that comes out from the office in which I put a blurb into it. There's PTO-sponsored events, school-sponsored events, and then the teachers do send weekly newsletters to families in a variety of different ways. Some do it, via email, some do it in paper copy, some send through the different apps. So just making sure that we're constantly communicating.
Any questions? Ms. Raccio?
Along the lines of, wait a minute, month three. So, Ms. Blizzy, last year when we talked about communications with families, this was the school that was piloting the IRLA kind of cheat sheets for parents as to where students were with their reading. Is that something that, I guess to both of you, is it still being done, and has the pilot gone across the district now?
I can only speak right now for Pond Hill. I know many of the teachers did take advantage of that last year and did send a lot of that home and reference it even in their conferences with their parents along the way. So my assumption is that many of them will continue
They
that.
are, and they're talking to parents about how to choose books for students based on that IRLA data, which is very important. So when they're out, they can really talk to their kids about why are you choosing this book, how can we go about picking it out. The kids know how to do that in the classroom, so that is continuing this year.
And then from our lens, our office redid all of the parent skills checklists that talk about what each level, the foundational skills for that particular level are, how parents can help their students at home. And it was recommended that teachers send those home as part of the leveling process, refer to them at conference time, as well as when their student changes levels.
So that's just a recommendation. It's just up to the teacher whether or not they do it. I've yet to get one.
Well, they just finished leveling on Friday, so, you know, it was a whole month where they had the opportunity to get to know their students as readers, and the window closed Friday. So, you know, I'm sure it'll be coming home shortly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Carlson. I am the new principal at Rock Hill. I am like Kristen Valero. I am 3 months into Wallingford Public Schools, so I do not have as many feathers in my cap as my counterpart, Rob, over there at Moses Y Beach. Rock Hill is very unique. It has been a wonderful community to begin to join, but you will see that my 2 slides will look a little bit different than my counterparts, although the academic pieces are very much aligned. The work that we're doing in our building is very similar to all the work being done academically in the other building, but we have a very strong focus on the community and the connectedness based on where we have come from and the history of Rock Hill. So last year, Rock Hill had 2 goals about increasing achievement for reading and for math, and to keep families informed. There was administrator turnover. We did have a staff member on long-term leave for surgery, and then we also lost a family member within the building. And so with sort of everything going on around the building, there was definitely a school climate downturn. So I feel, in working with my staff this year, it's about new beginnings, and we're really working from the ground up. So our goal is to really begin to go back to our first thoughts of what do we want our impact to be? Our impact has to drive the work that we do at Rock Hill, so we have to work to develop an impact statement this year, which is going to be our mission vision. We just don't have one currently. We are working really hard to lay the foundation to rebuild all of our community. That is with our students, with our families, and with our staff members. And of course, we want to strengthen our core. We want to grow our readers, our writers, our mathematicians, and our scientists. Academically, 100% we are here to grow them. But we are also looking at growing the social, emotional, and cultural competencies of all of our stakeholders. Really important for us this year. So we've got a lot going on. I focused the strategy column, and you'll see, on things that we are doing currently outside of the academic pieces. We are there. We are analyzing our data. We have all the benchmark assessments. We have STAR. We have ERLA. We have the computational fluency. We have SRBI. We have interventions. We have everything that you heard tonight. But I wanted to highlight the things that I'm bringing to the school and working with staff on to really begin to bring them together as a community so that we can focus on engagement, connectedness, and growing everyone's overall just relationship with the school, with one another, so that we can really work on growing ourselves as teachers and as learners. So for the students, of course, we are using benchmark and assessment data. We are analyzing discipline data. The way that I collect it currently is I collect it in a spreadsheet, and it automatically graphs, so I know already at the end of the month where we are and where our pockets of need are. Our attendance data, we're ready to print our monthly attendance data and look at that as well. And we are working with our climate committee on a climate check-in. We have already done a dipstick test for our parent community. We will be working with the committee to pull the pieces out of the 2-year climate survey and do a small student survey that will be a couple of times this year to see how we're doing. Some of the things that are really exciting at Rock Hill this year, Words of Wisdom, I resurrected that, which are, it's part of our morning message. In addition to the second step message that is incorporated, I do second step message on Monday mornings. The rest of the week, it is Words of Wisdom, and that is building character traits with the kids. It's making them be reflective messages to just think about different qualities, different values, and reminding them that the choice is always theirs to make it a great day. Of course, restorative practices is something I'm trying to weave into the Rock Hill environment, which is really building, again, connections, relationships, teachers to students, students to students, teachers to teachers, and of course with our families as well. Look for the good. Really excited about this. This will be starting in the spring. Our student council is going to be running this, but this is a gratitude kindness campaign where we have the students who are going to be working with staff and our families about just recognizing the value of one another and believing in one another and just cherishing what everyone has inside of themselves that lends itself to the greater good. And then positive behavior, of course, with the behavior already with the discipline data. Lunch recess is already our pocket of need. And so we are already working to develop with the climate committee a positive behavior system to impact what is happening currently in the lunch and recess situation to drive those discipline office referrals down, hopefully for October. And then for our teachers, of course, we're looking at all of the data, their student outcome data that is going on currently with all the benchmark assessments, their summative assessments, their formative assessments. We are looking at the staff participation. Are they getting involved? We're looking at their involvement in the committees. I spent a lot of time in August as we did a lot of relationship building with the staff, but really saying the school can be whatever you want it to be, but it certainly takes a village. And so looking at who has bought into the idea that we must all take a little piece of the pie to make it what we want. So I want to look at that. The other piece is the observation and the walkthrough data, of course, taking a look at and as you heard my colleagues talk about the learning indicators and the targets on the board for student learning, making sure that there's a fidelity to that. And the climate committee will also take the big survey, pick the couple of questions that focus where our goal is about helping them feel connected to the learning environment and creating a short dipstick check-in for them that we will administer a couple of times this year to see how we're doing in line with our goal. So the strategies for our teachers will be, I'm really excited about a lot of this work that we're doing. The master schedule supports collaboration across the grade level, and we are unique, Rock Hill, in that we have pods as well. So teachers can also collaborate with their grade level pods or together as the entire grade level. So we've mastered the schedule so that can happen. And then we've looked at the instructional coaches schedule and we've aligned our grade level meetings to the times that they're in their building. And I'm really excited about that. I met with both coaches about conducting a needs assessment with my staff and really trying to find out from them what are the areas that we can help grow their capacity. And that's our next step, is staff to take the needs assessment and then the coaches to really design the opportunities in grade level meetings, in coaching with them to personalize their learning, because if we can grow their capacity with instruction, obviously they'll have greater student outcomes. Additionally, we have professional book club. Our goal is once a trimester, we are ready to sail with fostering resilient learners. I picked about 5 or 6 titles, sent out a survey to staff and gave them the synopsises of all the books and said which one piques your interest the most. And we have 21 of our staff members joining this book club, ready to start. Very excited about that. And then the lab classrooms and the learning walks, we did hear a little bit talk in some of our schools about that, but the lab classrooms for me is I have one teacher per grade level that would like to align themselves with a coach. So every time that the coach is in the building, they'd like to have some of that coach time, really honing in on a piece of that instruction that they want to grow. And through those lab classrooms, we will then develop a model lesson or a model observation where then I can get the whole grade level to observe a piece of that instruction. And we can do, and we heard Mary talk about the pre-brief and the post-brief, and really personalizing and helping to grow the instruction with reading and with math. Learning walks is the other piece, and I think Christina was talking about that, getting our staff to get into each other's rooms. I think it's really important to open our doors and to not live behind our door, but to realize that we have value among our staff. The other piece that just went out, my PD committee met this morning and we designed a PD survey. I much prefer to call it professional learning and not professional development because we're just always learning. But we have a survey for them to find out for the building-based PD coming up in December, what are you interested in growing? Where? What areas? What do you need from us? What can we do? And are you willing to lead any of it? Because we have leaders all among us, and if we can really rise to the occasion of getting into each other's rooms and sharing our expertise, we can really break down the walls and barriers and really feel connected to our learning environment and be willing to grow from one another. And then on top of that, staff appreciation and recognition, working really hard to let staff know that I recognize all of their hard efforts so far. We have a shout out board. I redesigned the entire teachers room in the summer, and we have a shout out board that we just have all the sticky notes on. Anyone can put a random thank you to somebody. We have special reserved parking that teachers get drawn raffles for. They have I personalized some birthday cards and bought birthday chocolates for their birthday. We make announcements, things that I think haven't been done in at least the very most recent past, and I just want them to feel special and appreciated and part of the environment. And then now the community is something that is really important to me. Now, we heard Rob talk about what a robust PTAC and PTO he has at Moses Y, and for some reason, we come to Rock Hill, and there's a drop. PTO is not well attended, and so my goal this year is to figure out why and try to bring the community from Moses Y up to Rock Hill. So we want to look at our PTO participation. We want to look at our family involvement in all of our school activities and events. I did my website analytics. What that means is I do send out, instead of using Google Docs, I have a website called S'more, and it's just a little fancy newsletter. But I can track how many opens it has and where it's coming from, and so it was really good. I tried Sunday to send out a newsletter, and then I tried a Friday, and on a Friday it got 19 opens, but on a Sunday it got 200 opens. So I realized that even just a change of a day that I'm sending it out might make a difference in being able to communicate with my families. Coffee Talk with Carlson is my attempt to get some families to have some informal conversations with me and also bring some families in before PTO meetings. PTO programs and celebrations, I met with the new president this year and really excited to bring new things to Rock Hill. We're putting in turkey bingo, we're putting in a school dance that didn't exist, and really trying to get celebrations from classroom spotlights to try to get parents and families involved in what's happening in the school. I think it's really important, and as I said to Open House, what happens between a teacher and student is linear, but when we put that parent in there, we now have this team, this triangle effect, and I really want parents to see that they have an important role in helping their children be successful. So whatever I can do to design new programs with PTO, absolutely willing to do. And then this, I'm really excited about, the Welcoming Schools Committee. We have a community outreach committee / Welcoming Schools, but they're taking on the CREC initiative. They're taking pieces of the CREC initiative to figure out how to make Rock Hill the welcoming environment that it can and should be. The nature of this school, the layout of this school is counterproductive to feeling warm and welcoming, so we're gonna make it warm and welcoming. We're gonna do it.
A lot better than it was, though.
Well, when it was without the hallways. So that's just us in a nutshell and what's happening at Rock Hill.
I have a question. I love the professional book club. I think that's awesome that you're doing that. And my question is, you got them reading. What's the follow-up? Are you doing a staff meeting, a PD, a discussion? What are you going to do with that?
Yes. So actually, can I put her on the spot? Mrs. Gibertoni is here, and I have slightly twisted her hand to take on the book club.
Okay.
Is it okay? Okay, so Mrs. Gibertoni is working on getting her 092, and so one of the things I asked her to do was to take this on. Come on up. And so we talked, but you can share your vision. Share your vision.
So we've decided to use the book Fostering Resilient Learners and having our staff spend a lot of time looking at stressors and trauma that can affect students in the classroom. So we took a poll of the staff. We're going to be meeting before and after school to meet the needs of the majority of our 21 members. And we are dividing our book into sections, having small group discussions, but then we're hoping to lead ongoing conversations that we'll be able to bring into our classrooms with our parents and continue the conversation to choose our next book. The goal really is to broaden our awareness of what trauma might be in the classroom and how we can better serve and meet the needs of our kids. To be honest with you, I was absolutely blown away by the tremendous support that we got from it. I know that Lisa and I were both talking about trying to get a small group together. 21 is a little overwhelming. We're excited, but it's a little overwhelming. And I have already had staff, the books were just passed out last week. We created bookmarks, kind of, planning out what they have to read and when they have to read it. And I've already had staff tell me that they've started the book, they're taking notes. They were thrilled that Lisa found a way to provide the books to us without a cost. So we're highlighting, we're writing, we're tagging, and they're coming up and sharing how thrilling they're finding the book, that it's not dry, it's not boring, and that it's really something that they can't wait to talk about. So it is our first endeavor. As far as what's going to happen after, which is what I think you were asking, we're not quite sure yet. We're hoping that the after will be that they sign up for the next one. And then from there, we'll be able to kind of gauge the growth.
And so to add on, thank you, that was really great. To add on to that, it is a monthly get-together. She's divided the book into 3 parts, and it is just a monthly get-together. She doesn't know that I already have the next handful of books ready for the next semester. The next semester, we are diving into making thinking visible, thinking routine, thinking a little bit more academically. But this trauma, social, emotional piece is really important to me first as a building block.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions? Ms. Corso?
I certainly don't have a solution to the PTAC PTO
Yes.
issue. However, anecdotally, I would speak for Rock Hill and probably many of the 3 to 5 buildings that we have a community of really involved kids outside of school, and especially 3 to 5 athletes, Cub Scouts, things like that. And I suspect that that probably plays a role in the decline of 3 to 5 PTO and PTAC. And then my other comment, I heard every school utilizes our coaches so well and so significantly, and I think that's really important, and that speaks volumes to our coaches, and I think it's a luxury that our district provides, and I'm really happy to be able to do that.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Snyder. With me is Mrs. Melita. We are the principal and assistant principal for Dag Hammarskjöld, and I have to compliment the elementary school colleagues. I always learn a lot through this process. And, the collective work that they do, obviously all the students come up through, and they go through the entire system. I can speak for Sheehan and Lyman Hall, having been there, and now it being at Dag Hammarskjöld, but obviously I think the tenor of everything you're hearing is that we try to be all things to all kids, I think more than anything else. So we're happy to be here tonight, tell you a little bit about Dag Hammarskjöld. It is our 3rd year as building administrators. Dag Hammarskjöld is the 3rd largest school in the district, behind Lyman Hall and Sheehan. What makes us a little larger, and I'm only saying this because it's October 1st and it's the enrollment, we're sitting easily at 682 students. What makes us a little bit bigger staff-wise, we're proud to have Inspire, all middle school age students who have intellectual disabilities come to Dag Hammarskjöld. With that is more staff. We have more dedicated para-educators as well as certified staff. And this year we're also happy to have arts with us. Any of the students who used to be at Lyman Hall are now with us, about a total of 5 students. Might be going to 6 before this month is through. But we're also, with that is more paras, instructional assistants, and certified staff. So we had a bit of a change this year. We have 8 new certified staff. We had a lot of retirements during the course of the year. One of the retirements came at the end of the year, and we're happy to have them. The only grades that are not affected by this is, grade 6. Both teams for 7 and 8th, all 4 teams have really new staff members to it, and that includes some team changes as well. In addition to that, this is our 2nd year with the new master schedule. And the feedback we've gotten so far is that the teachers and our students are really enjoying it. And what makes our new schedule really unique is the enrichment block, very similar to office hours at the high school level. But enrichment happens on every C day. We have an A, B, C rotating schedule, and we're really excited about the opportunities that can happen in enrichment, whether it's open gym, whether it is any of the Encore staff providing opportunities for them. We're excited this year more than any other. So being our 3rd year, first year is getting to know everybody. 2nd year, we implemented the new schedule, and this 3rd year, and Christine and I were talking about it just last week, how it feels markedly different. There's a certain ownership to it, and we're really happy with the start of this school year. Much like our elementary colleagues, our goals center on academic, social, emotional, culture, and climate, as well as community connections. And with that, there's been a lot of talk tonight about learning targets, where teachers are going to be engaging with their learning targets, not just within the instructional and assessment development, but also making sure that the learning targets are articulated either verbally or on the board, and making sure that that's happening in every class every day. Responsive classroom is something that many of our staff have gone through. We're implementing responsive advisory. We had that 2 years ago, and now this is the 3rd year for it. Advisory is twice a month. It happens in enrichment class, enrichment block, and it's something that seasonally the lessons kind of move with the school year. So it's about getting to know you in the beginning of the year, and then setting goals and just academic monitoring. And then as the school year goes on, we talk about with the seasons changing, we talk about gratitude and all the different kind of values that we want to impress. For culture and climate, the survey item that we really are focusing on is the one that I think that every student, K through 12, really wants to get at, which is I like coming to school each day. So that's something that we want to focus on informally. At some point this year, we'd like to survey our students and try to get at the heart of what is it that makes them want to come to school, or conversely, not want to come to school. And we do that. We have a core SRBI team, an EIP, and we really do talk about students in detail. And one of the things that we adopted from Moran last year, and we're including it this year, is the Hands Up protocol, and making sure that all students are getting at least looked at and are brought up. So we're going through every single student, and we're happy about that. So for this, and again, won't spend a lot of time on it, but we have a lot of different measures that we're going to use and strategies to employ this, and Christine can talk about this part.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I know you're all tired. We'll try to keep it brief. Todd spoke about most of this in our first slide. For students, we, just like the elementary schools, are measuring our STAR data, our EARLA data. We're also looking at some performance tasks, and the climate survey from last year, the item that Todd talked about. We will be doing a sort of informal Google form item to see how our students are feeling about coming to school each day. Because as you know, middle school is the time when not only does it require the parent getting the child into the car and bringing them to school, but this is the age when we see students start to decide whether or not they're really invested in getting there on time and prepared and wanting to be there each and every day that they can be. We do have a team model being a middle school, so in addition to kind of the more formal SRBI, our teams do talk about our students at every opportunity. They share that core group of teachers so that they can share strategies that are effective academically and socially and emotionally. Through EARLA, we're setting power goals for reading. We are doing responsive advisory, like Mr. Snyder said, twice a month. And the enrichment opportunities that we are able to provide in our schedule is enhanced, especially this year now that none of our teachers need to use that as their prep period. So today was a C day. We got to see enrichment in action like we do every 3 days. It's been effective. Students have had the opportunities to do many different things. Today we had a blood drive meeting where we have some student volunteers preparing for that later on in the school year. And this next Enrichment Day, we're going to have Officer Cadet come and speak to the students about internet safety, and it's really nice that that time is built in so that an assembly doesn't disrupt any planned learning time. For the teachers, we're obviously measuring SLOs and IGDs through classroom observations, walkthroughs, et cetera. It is a district focus that we are talking about learning targets with students, making sure that they can articulate what it is they're learning and why and where it fits into the broader context of their school day and hopefully their future career. We are also implementing some new and/or improved curriculum this year. Our math teachers are using the illustrative math, and I've been fortunate enough to kind of witness this firsthand in all of the classrooms. Things like number talks, things like some hands-on problem solving. Math instruction looks a lot different now than when I was in school, and it seems to be a lot more engaging and make a lot more sense to students, so that's a positive thing. The literacy block is happening in ELA. Our teachers were very, very excited after their summer professional development with an expert, and they are continuing to sort of implement that in their classes. When it comes to community, just the same as everyone else was talking about, the more we can increase parent involvement and community involvement, the better. Middle school does tend to be a time when we see a little bit of a dip in parent involvement, but that shouldn't be the case, and it doesn't have to be the case. Parent involvement. Sorry, I'm trying to go fast, and I'm from New York. This is my slow speed. This is me going slowly. So we do want to see, all right, I'll slow it down for that, just for you. We do want to see increased parental involvement. We had a great turnout at our open house, which is always great to see. And we do communicate with parents on a continual basis, whether it's through our weekly e-blasts, our website updates, which include our daily announcements that the students see, our Twitter page, which I try to remain active on, and just all the kind of typical communication that one would expect in this day and age. So I take it you have questions. Sorry, everybody, I was really trying.
Do you have a way to get to the sheet of paper, the packet we have?
I do not believe there's extras.
Here. I need an explanation of some of these scores.
Sure.
If you can just explain for instance, the SBAC math. Explain what those numbers mean. Percent at level 3 or above. What's level 3? What do those percentages mean?
Yep, so on the SBA, similar to the CMT, but please don't try to equate them because they are quite different. A student can score a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and the 3 is sort of considered that benchmark where we want students to be. The scores that you see in front of you are last year's scores, where students wound up. The percentage that you see is where we want them to be. Obviously, we are not quite there yet, but
You want them to be?
we want them to obviously be higher than they are there, but we want them to be a 3 or a 4.
The state benchmark is a score of a 3 or above. So the percentage that you see listed in their plan are those students who met the goal or above, yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to get clarification on, you mentioned something about the enrichment period and somebody coming in. You kind of went through that fast. Can you explain that again?
Sure. So as you recall from all of our talks about the new schedule, the enrichment block is a carved out block of time in the middle of C Day, which happens every 3 days. It's 65 minutes long. And during this time, students really have to think about what it is that they need. Whether it's simple academic help, extra help, perhaps, collaboration time to work with partners or peers on an assignment, or if it's something a little more geared towards their personal interests. If they would like to pursue their artistic side, they can go to set design. We have students who are doing gymnastics in one of the back gyms. We had students today playing basketball on the inside gym, and they were playing flag football outside on the fields. We have a lot of music lessons that take place during that time and will continue to take place during that time for the whole school year. We have Builders Club that meets during that time. We have a Kindness Squad that meets during that time. All sorts of kind of activities for students to partake in.
You mentioned something about a speaker.
On Thursday, Officer Cadet, Henry Cadet, he's the community officer on the Wallingford PD. He's coming in to present to all of our students about internet safety, whole school. So the whole school has enrichment at the same time, but the way we structure it so that no one is missing instruction is we alter the schedule just a bit. So the first group will go first, and then they'll go to their regular enrichment course offerings, and then the second group will come in flip-flop.
Now, are teachers keeping track fact that those students need that push to do something during that period, and not just sit there and, nothing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Teachers provide passes to students. For instance, if I'm a math teacher and I know that you needed some extra help in math because you didn't quite understand the lesson that day or your scores weren't so great, I would provide to you a pass and say, please come and see me during that time.
All right, I just had a question about the responsive advisory classes. Are those lessons the same for every class, or are they personalized?
So one of the things that happened back in the spring, Ms. Latour was able to get us responsive advisory kind of books, if you will. And they are canned lessons. The past 2 years, we've developed our own. The culture and the team in the school would make our own lessons. This year, it's a little bit different. They're canned, but there is flexibility in them. Even if it's something we suggest those lessons and they go to the page and they do it, but the advisory teacher really has to. It's about relationships and it's about getting to know those students. If there's a lesson that doesn't ring true to the advisory teacher and they want to do something a little bit different, that's fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with teachers conferencing with students. It's a small enough class, anywhere from 10, 11, 12 students, where they can take that time and conference with students. Power School is there and they can have students come up and what subjects are they doing weekend, what are they excelling in, what are their strengths, and challenges that lie ahead. But they can also prompt that student to use enrichment. And I think the greatest question, and we've told students this, they should be asking, what do I need during enrichment? What do I need more than anything else? And that depends on what they need, depending on where they are academically or socially for that matter. But it's really one of those open blocks of time where students can answer that question, and they're doing it.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Havlick.
Yes, can you give me a little bit more information about what your in-school suspension looks like, how it's staffed, what students are doing during that time?
Sure. So, we were a little surprised by the in-school suspension numbers. I'm going to share this with the staff.
Yes, they were.
Well, when you when you look at them and the Excel spreadsheet that I had there, it's a lot of different items. But the in-school suspension room, not any different from the other schools. It's manned by a paraeducator, and that paraeducator makes sure that the student gets work, so there's communication with his or her teachers. One of the things that we've implemented this year is kind of an outtake, little assignment that we give students. So it's not just doing the time and then leaving, but there needs to be some kind of a reflective piece. Why did the student get to in-school suspension, and how could they change their behavior moving forward so they don't get there? We have writing prompts that come from Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, and they can read some of those short little vignettes and then answer some questions that go along with it. And she has that resource, and we're really empowering her to choose the writing prompts as well as the story itself.
So on average, how many students are in school suspension at one time?
I think the most that we had last year at one time was 4 or 5, and that's a lot.
I'd say the average is closer to 0 or 1.
Right.
1 is probably the average.
Okay.
There might be a long time that goes by before a student is given in school, and by long time I mean like a week or 2. But then, fast and furious, there might be 3 or 4 students as there was last week. So
I'm trying to get an idea of what this looks like.
yeah, it's a small classroom, not a full one, but a small classroom. There are desks in there. They still have access to their work. They have access to the Chromebook, but they're basically outside. They're not part of their with their peers. But there's bathroom breaks, there's water breaks, there's lunch, but they're just not part of the classroom experiences.
Right. Thank you.
The OSS numbers, by the way, if it seems high, that's really
Yes, I was looking at these numbers. That's why I asked the question, because they seem pretty high.
40 of those numbers, I think the number, was it 44?
48.5.
40 of those days were assigned to 4 students in particular, and those were for extreme cases. So we've really, due the change years ago when it came from having less out-of-school suspensions and moving towards more restorative practices and/or moving to in-school has really shifted things. So that's probably why you see an influx in the number of in-school and out of school. While it might be 48, it's not dozens of students getting a lot of out of school. 40 of those 48 were to 4 students who did something that was
Mandatory
not good.
expulsion.
Right.
By the state of Connecticut's law.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Raccio.
Does a social worker or the guidance department get involved prior to the in-school suspension, or do they visit that day? How does that work?
Both. If ever we kind of have a student in our office who sees the school social worker formally, informally, or what have you, they are always kind of the first piece. They work with us. We make sure that the teacher who perhaps wrote them up was implementing the behavior plan properly. It's not as though students who see those people are exempt from consequences. However, they definitely check in with them and discuss with us in a collaborative way what the best sort of plan of action would be for that particular student. For instance, for some students, a 25-minute lunch detention is a huge deterrent, perhaps even more so than a day of in-school suspension, whereas for others, that's not the case. Those people know their students really well. Our school counselors do the same sort of thing. In fact, today we unfortunately had some boys in school suspension, and their counselor, I witnessed kind of walking the hall, kind of having a, let's walk, let's talk about why you got there, let's talk about what we're going to do moving forward in a positive way. So yeah, they do a good job of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Piacentini, building principal at James H. Moran Middle School. This is my 7th year, starting my 7th year at Moran, so it's been a good experience. Sort of entrenched in the building now, so it's really been good to see it grow and move along. We are, as you know, a 6th through 8th school. We have slightly under 600 students at this time, so we're a little bit smaller than DAG, obviously. One of the things that I think that I'm most excited about for this year, and that's why I put it first on this list, is our retention of staff. We only have 3 new teachers in the building this year, and they're not actually new to Wallingford even. They were transfers from other schools for different opportunities in Moran. So we have a lot of consistency. We have just under 65 teachers, and to have that many come back is really going to help us out. And what I think, it allows us to start the year running, and I think the transition for summertime transition was a little bit easier for us for that reason. Especially the 3 new staff were Wallingford trained. Actually, one of them was a former Moran teacher who left for a short period of time due to getting bumped and then came back to us. So again, the familiarity with what we do and what our population does is there. So that's really going to help us with that transition, and then help us move forward with some of the academic goals we're looking to do, and then the social emotional things that we're looking to do in the school. Another thing that was very encouraging as we ended last school year was the growth in our school climate. Our school climate numbers were a lot higher than they've been in a long time. We actually saw quite a big bump from the year prior to last year. So that was really encouraging. It gives us something good to carry over for this year. And again, having the same staff moving that forward. And even our non-certified staff is for the most part, probably about 95% returning, which is really good for us. What I could attribute to that is obviously Wallingford students are awesome. It's really been an impressive community. I was new to Wallingford completely, knew very little about the community, and in the 6+ years I've been here, it's an excellent community. As I said, teacher retention. Mr. Bologna and I have developed quite a relationship now as the years he's been here, and that's sort of grown. And the consistent approaches that we have together has really helped staff to move forward and understand what our goals and vision is, and then the students, of course. And we also offer some excellent professional learning opportunities, both district-based, building-based, and some teacher passions that they go outside the district for. This year, our focus for as far as school climate goes is going to be to try to increase the student voice and that feeling of belonging. There's a lot of community work that our pre-K through through 5 colleagues have talked about, and we'd like to continue upon that and make sure that we bring all those communities together into one building. And then again, that feeling of belonging, as Mr. Snyder mentioned, we also offer responsive advisory. That gives the students an additional adult besides their core teachers to talk to, somebody they know and maybe in non-academic setting, so that a trusted adult maybe that they wouldn't have known otherwise, and we really hope that continues to grow as it has. Our literacy focus this year was, last year we did academic vocabulary. This year we're going to focus a little more on word, phrase, meaning, inferences, and citing text evidence. We see it as a nice flow from what we did last year. And then our math focus, we're going to continue focus on reasoning and problem solving. As my colleagues have said, we're not overjoyed with some of the scores we've been seeing in our STAR data, and we really hope to increase that. We see what it is. We want it to increase and improve. And I'm really hoping, and I'd be very disappointed in myself and in the building if we don't see a significant growth come May and June in our STAR scores and our ERLA scores and our SBA scores, based on that consistent approach, based on that building of goals from this year to next. And that's sort of an overview of who we are. I'm going to let Mr. Bologna take over the rest.
Good evening. I'm going to highlight, because we see a lot of the same measures that are being used across the board, I'm going to highlight some of the strategies that we're going to use to address the goals for each stakeholder. But I can talk about Lyman Hall. Okay. I don't want to. I shouldn't have thrown that out there. So what we're going to look at in terms of students is we do a lot of work with our teachers in regards to Renaissance Professional Development, and that's the company that oversees our STAR components. So actually starting tomorrow with our 6th grade teachers, Wednesday with our 8th grade, and next week with our 7th grade teachers, we're actually going to have a Renaissance professional doing like a webinar with them, showing them how to dive deeper into the data that they're looking at, with the end goal not being to just identify where students are, but to really look at what strategies can be used for certain pockets of kids who might be struggling in a particular area. To address all of our student goals, we have grade level meetings, which include data team meetings, and SRBI meetings that happen throughout our 3-day cycle. You've heard a lot about learning targets. I think the best thing I see when I go into a room is that they're in student-friendly language. It's easy to put an objective up on the board. It's a lot harder to really ask a student to explain what that objective means. So when it says, when you see, I can explain using 3 details why my hypothesis was correct, something like that. I'm not a science teacher, so I don't know why I picked that. But to see those I can statements are great because you're asking students to do something they can really comprehend. As far as teachers go, we're going to start looking at creating their SLOs and IEGDs. At our faculty meeting on Wednesday, our subject area coordinators are actually going to be working with our teachers to dive deeper into STAR data, to identify what their SLOs are going to be, and to not just look at all of their students, but in addition to that, looking at certain subgroups that might be struggling in particular areas. Like you've heard, we have our math teachers working with illustrative math, as well as our science teachers fully implementing NGSS. Both of those groups, I have no issue saying they have dove into this head first. The math teachers especially, I was able to join them on their first PD day. I've never seen a group of teachers so eager to just get to work on, okay, Unit 1, let's go, start creating what's going to work, what's not going to work. And they just finished up Unit 1 now, they've been working on Unit 2. It's a really great thing to see. We do have a lot of collaborative time within our schedule, and we're really going to be looking to provide as much building-based professional development as we can. We have a building PD committee that's going to meet next week. As far as community goes, we're again looking at PTAC and PTO meetings as a way to get parents involved. I think since everyone else has said, this is my 3rd year here, but in terms of open house as well as the meet and greet, I was amazed and so happy about the amount of parents. I mean, parking lot full, it seemed like at least half the students' parents were there on that day.
It's been an excellent addition. That was really well attended. Parents loved
They
it,
were
so.
like parking all over the place.
Yes,
It was a hazard.
The ones that have to go to 3 different schools during that time, they're especially happy to be there. But updating our school website, including our the e-backpack that's there that houses all of our e-blasts to go out is always a helpful addition. We do weekly e-blasts on the same day every week, so parents are kind of aware the day to open it. And we do have our Triad newsletter where it goes out once every trimester to keep parents updated with what's going on at Moran.
Any questions? Mr. Vada?
On the grade level meetings, is that like both teams together come together, or is that just team meetings?
It would
There are
depend.
2 teams per grade, correct?
Correct. So, given the rotation, might be if it's we do, I don't want to get into the way the schedule works because it's confusing, but depending on what the rotation is, it might be a team meeting on one day, a data team meeting on another day. If they're in data teams, it might be one team, let's say if they're looking at reading scores, it might be the ELA teacher and the social studies teacher on one team working together, or it might be a time in which those 2 teachers on each team, along with special ed teachers, are meeting to discuss kind of what they're seeing in terms of trends in the whole grade.
But the actual 5 teachers that make up a team, do they meet regularly every week?
Yes.
So they meet regularly. They meet regularly during their schedule as well. And then what you were alluding to as far as grade level meetings, the webinars that Mr. Bologna was referring to that we're having, that's when we get the entire grade level together. So all 6th grade teachers will be in the same room, all 7th grade teachers and all 8th grade teachers.
All right, but going back to the team meeting, they
Yeah.
meet at least once a week, is
Oh,
that
at
it?
least, yeah, definitely more
Because
than
they have a
that.
common prep period?
Correct.
And do you guys ever sit in on those meetings?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question I had was, when you talk about the building-based professional development, who decides that? Is it just the principal and vice principal, or do the teachers have an input? in
No,
that?
like all the other buildings, our building has a professional development committee that includes the staff in the building.
Okay.
So it's decided by staff and then through some informal surveys and conversations as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Havlick?
Yes, I'm looking at your technology, and, this is the first year your students have universal access to Chromebooks. What are you seeing? How are you seeing the technology being used?
Yeah, I should have highlighted that actually in the first slide. But yeah, it's been excellent actually. The thing that I think has been greatest about having that universal access is that teachers don't need to worry about whether or not they have technology available when they're developing their lesson plans. So they know that students will always come in with a Chromebook. So they can choose to use it that day, they can choose not to use it that day. They never have to worry about, all right, this week the computer lab's open, or this week the Chromebook cart is going to be in my room and not the social studies teacher's room. So I think number one is just that ability for teachers to appropriately plan to use technology, or more importantly to not use technology if it's not appropriate to use it. What I'm seeing is it's all over the board. Students are creating with it, students are researching with it, students are using it for very basic means as far as getting onto Google and doing some presentation-like material, to some of the more advanced things we're seeing in some of our perhaps capstone classes, or in our some of our technology education classes, or in the STEP classroom. So it's really been all over the board. Teachers are still getting used to it. What I've noticed now is that it's probably at 100%. In some classroom, they're using Google Classroom in some way, shape, or form now, which is, when Ms. Corso was mentioning the amount of different opportunities they have for app-based technology, Google Classroom is really pretty much the only thing we use, and it is really a great way to focus families and kids all into one direction. So I guess that's sort of been the impact so far, but it's only been a month, so we're still sort of doing some informal looks right now. But and I like that it's being used all over the place. Actually, PE the other day had an opportunity to use it for something they wanted students to do, so they grabbed an open classroom, and some of our PE teachers were using the Chromebooks with kids. So it's really one of those things where it just allows teachers to plan differently.
I'm glad that it's being used across
Absolutely.
all disciplines. That's good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Raccia?
Can you explain the writing portfolio and how that's going to transfer up through high school? Is that just like a folder in Google Classroom? How does that work?
I'll let Mr. Blanchard.
So it's in the beginning stages right now, but essentially we're going to be looking at rolling it out. At first, it's going to be items that teachers are going to want in a folder that students have in their Google Drive. The eventual goal of it is once students get to 7th and 8th grade, they're making the conscious decision, this assignment was something that really showed off, what I can do in terms of writing. And they're going to be deciding what work goes into that. A lot of it's going to start off being, a lot of things that are graded. It's going to evolve into things that aren't just because I had an assignment to do. It's because I wanted to write about something. It's because I wanted to, whether it could be, and it could be things outside of the ELA classroom, in health class in 8th grade, they have to do a project on my natural high when they talk about drug and alcohol awareness. Maybe that's a component of it that goes into that writing portfolio. And again, having those Chromebooks every single day, you're not trying to figure out like Mr. Piacentini was saying, okay, I can only use them on this day. Now I can go in anytime, see what I've done, reference what I've done.
So maybe eventually we could drop the writing part and it could just be their portfolio, because I think I have the YouTube link from that project back in 8th grade. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Joe.
Thanks for sticking with us till the end. I want to thank Rob really quickly. Every year I've done this, he's worn an orange and blue tie supporting Lyman Hall. So I think that should be noted, and it is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Rob. That's it. And I think that's one of the important things to highlight here is we are the kind of the flagship schools of the district, and every student that starts down with Rob ends up with me and all my other colleagues. So Lyman Hall is an amazing place to work. Right now we're just about 1,086 students. We have many students from out of town, which poses some unique issues for us when they are starting with us as freshmen. But we will continually review our data, including school climate, SAT, AP, and STAR data. Mr. Votto, one of the things I wanted to highlight about the STAR data, which we utilize really well in our intervention program, is when our students take the STAR assessment will actually break down very specific skills that they're weak in and also separate skills that they might be weak in, but they do need on those next steps in their educational process. So it separates out some skills that they might be weak in that we don't need to focus additional time on, and those skills that we really do.
That's what I thought, but that seemed to have gotten lost in the conversation here. That
So-
it did not do that specifically, and I thought it did.
It does.
So what makes
It's
you saying that?
simply with the double arrow in some of the skills. When you see a double arrow listed by some of those skill shortfalls that our students have, that's a double arrow indicating that skill will be needed at the next step of math as that student progresses. So that's really an easy way for our interventionists to really have an impact. And in talking about eventually when we move on and really push into the indicator piece, summer school being really targeted. So we'll be able to identify a student in maybe 10 specific skills that we need them to pick up during summer school and not necessarily just retake Algebra 1. So we're not there yet, but that is the intent as we move forward.
Sounds good.
Continuing to refine our SRBI process for early intervention. We get a lot of students from out of town that come in recommended for specific classes, and we don't get a lot of information. So our STAR assessment, the window just ended, but as that data comes in, our interventionists, our teachers, our staff, our guidance counselors are looking through the data and making those early recommendations to SRBI so that we can better meet the needs of those students quickly. What we find at the high school level is the more change and positive effect we can have on a student in their freshman year, the greater likelihood they are to graduate. So at this point, we've put in our freshman academy that meets for the first 4 months of school. They will not have office hours. Our freshmen will all be taking part in the freshman academy, which we focused on study skills, social emotional learning that takes place in high school. Just highlighting some of the areas they need to focus on to be successful. Because what we find obviously is those students that struggle through freshman year, struggle through senior year, and the students that we can make some quick improvements on, get them the skills, get them the resources, just knowing the important individuals that they can talk to help them better acclimate to high school is truly important. You know, it's quite often in all high schools where you'll have a sophomore or junior that's kind of remembers who their guidance counselor is, kind of remembers who their assistant principal is, and it's easy for them to, especially if they're right here academically and doing everything they need to get lost. And really what we're trying to do is kind of engage them early on so that they know all those people, we know all those students, and we can really make sure it's taking place. We're continuing to improve the use of PLGs, our professional learning groups, which meet every other day. And that's a group of very specific teachers. So our Algebra 1 teachers are in a PLG. Our English 1 teachers are in a PLG. We have a few cross-curricular PLGs. And what we're asking those PLGs to do this year, especially the cross-curricular ones, is really look at some key instructional data and then presenting that back to our staffs during some of our faculty meetings, potentially some of our professional development sessions. So we're really looking to kind of charge those PLGs with using that data proactively with the rest of the staff, because some of the stuff that they're putting together is just tremendous, and we haven't done a good job sharing that in the past. And the PLGs are new to us. last year. So we're really just trying to better utilize some of those PLGs and as we move forward. You've heard me talk about the Freshman Academy. It's had a tremendous success so far. We've had 3 meetings now. I believe the freshmen are really engaged, truly involved in the process. It's getting them started. We have a number of teachers that volunteered to kind of organize and run the academy, and it also goes through our SRBI process. Our guidance counselors are participating so that everyone's involved with getting freshmen acclimated to Lyman Hall. Our goals this year are very simple. Academic, we just want continued growth in math, reading, and writing. And why we focus on those goals and not specifically science goals is because without those basic reading skills, our students can't read those science textbooks that we have or the science materials that we're reading. And what we see across the board is students that are successful in math and reading and writing are successful across disciplines. Really, those are the 3 skills that we need to, and they're working very hard. What we know, our STAR data has just rolled in. We've just completed it. But on average, we typically have about 150 to 200 students that fall in the intervention and on-watch categories. So those are students that we will begin to focus on intensely moving forward with our SRBI process, and also just our academic focus, getting parents involved, getting students involved, having them meet with counselors and teachers and our administrative team. Again, the social emotional piece is the SRBI and Freshman Academy. And our culture and climate, we are focused on one piece this year, and that's making sure students feel safe. We took our survey last year just after the last traumatic event in Florida, and we saw about an 8 to 10 point dip in whether or not students feel safe when they come to school. More than any other time in recent history, that incident had a tremendous effect on our student body at the high school level. We've always been able to kind of adapt and overcome and get through it pretty quickly, and we didn't see that happen this time. We saw students that typically were not affected by outside events, truly affected and afraid to come to school the next day. They shared genuine concerns, so it's really something we want to focus on. You'll see, you can go forward to the next slide, Ms. Latour. Just if we go down to some of the student stuff, the implementation of our new ALICE procedures was a huge relief for many of our students. We've presented it to every class as a group, the procedures and what we're looking at. Many of our students were involved in those seminars and forums that we ran last year to help better make them feel secure and safe in schools. So that's a huge piece. Office hours, just promoting better use of office hours. We have a number of students that utilize it well. We have a number of faculty members that utilize our office hours well, giving passes to students that they know need extra support. But we're really trying to encourage all of our students to better utilize that time. Our college and career coordinator has done a great job, and we have anywhere from 8 to 14 college reps that come in every office hours so that they can visit and entertain. We'll have career fields come in so students can get information. So Jane has done a fantastic job kind of adding that piece, and you can always see that in our main lobby as we do our office hours setup. So it's really working out well. We'll continue to evaluate our implementation of our Freshman Academy. Again, the key for us is early identification of students. When you look at teachers, that's really the same as a lot of what you heard my colleagues talk about. Our PLGs last year were focused on looking at our assessments and making sure that we're assessing what we actually want to teach. So we've done a lot of modifications through that process. We want to continue to look at our performance indicators. Obviously, you've heard all of our colleagues talk about the learning targets on the board. We are doing the same at Lyman Hall. And it is nice to see our students actually, as they're walking into a classroom, looking to the board to see kind of the objective for the day. I think it does really make a difference. We have, one of the things we utilize is looking at our SAT data. And if you could see the chart in the larger report, we experience significant growth. And that group of students, the cohort in that chart, is the first group that we've been able to take through from the 10th grade PSAT, 11th grade PSAT, and the senior year or junior year SAT assessment. And if you look at the data, it's pretty good. Our students are growing by 51 and 41 points on those assessments. The kind of nationwide average is between 30 and 40. So there is a lot of tremendous growth. Obviously, the one thing we want to work on is the rest of our scores and some of those struggling learners to improve. One of the things I like to highlight is when you look at the national average of growth on an SAT, Those are not from states that require all juniors to take their SAT. So Connecticut's one of a few who now do require them. So all of our students in 11th grade are taking that SAT. And it's an unfair comparison outside of the state of Connecticut, really to look at those numbers as a whole. We are testing all students on a very difficult assessment, and they are demonstrating really positive growth. So we try to reinforce that with the students throughout the year and highlight that for our teachers too, because they're working hard for our students, trying to get them to progress and be ready for that next step. Not much has changed in the way of, again, our PTAC. We don't have PTO, so I don't know why. I actually tried editing that during the session, but I couldn't get in. Mrs. Latour locked it. I should have known she would do that. Our PTAC numbers are remarkably small, mainly because we have so many other organizations at the high school level. So from the Music Parents Association to our athletic booster clubs, to separate organizations for chorus and setting up for the play and our theater groups. A lot of our attendance and a lot of our parents' time is dedicated to that specific group that truly benefits their child, and that's completely understandable. We probably average somewhere between 6 to 10 consistent members at PTAC. I will say we have a wonderful freshman class of parents. Our freshman orientation that we had for parents right at the start of the school year was almost 100%. I think a little bit had to do with the fact that we were giving away free computers. But the attendance was fantastic. We saw an increase at our first PTAC meeting. Our second PTAC meeting is going to be a big one on vaping that we're going to be doing kind of secondary school-wide at the DAG auditorium. You'll see more information on that once we send out the blast. Other than that, everything will continue the same, and we're looking for a great year. Looking forward to a great year.
I do have a question.
Sure.
You talked about safety being like a big goal, and now you have school resource officer like 3 hours a day?
Absolutely.
What's happening with that?
So far, obviously he's had interactions with our students. They're approaching him now as a resource, which is great. We really worked hard the first couple of weeks breaking down the law enforcement official from kind of the school resource officer. Oh, that's not their title, they're school officers. But we need them to understand that he's approachable. We actually house him in our guidance office to make him more approachable. We initially were going to put him in the administrative offices, but that's a little more intimidating. Guidance is a more welcoming kind of feel to it. So him being there, students are approaching him, asking questions, everything from legal questions and legal advice to just issues that they're having at home in the community that he's able to answer and maybe support them through. He's helped us on a number of cases where we've had students in medical crisis. It's just a fantastic resource and one that you'll see, because when budget season comes around, we'll be asking for a full-time resource officer because I think the impact they have on the school is tremendous. He's been at all of our parent events. He's been at all of our class meetings with our students. He's been there to answer difficult questions, especially with implementation of ALICE and kind of the police expectation during that response. So he's a tremendous asset to the building.
Does he walk the halls or go?
He walks the halls. He spends, we try to base it around our cafeteria hours. So at any given time, we have around 350 students in the caf. So we try to get him there during those hours because that's when he's the most visible. But it's really flexible. So he's sharing a little bit of time at DAG. He's done a bunch of training. He'll come in the morning sometimes to see kids when they arrive. He'll be there at dismissal to control kids as they leave. Because our parking lot with new drivers is always interesting. One stat you won't see on there is we probably average somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 25 car accidents a year in the back parking lot, and that's mainly because students can't drive.
Any other questions? Mr. Vada?
If I missed this in your presentation, I apologize.
Nope, that's okay.
PSATs and SATs.
Yes.
Did you say anything about that?
Yeah, so if you look at the chart.
I
only spent like 3 minutes on it.
I asked Mrs. Purcell a question, and I said, I think I just missed what I wanted to know.
Mr. Vaught, if you look at that colored chart,
All right, it's not colored.
actually, I'm going to give you.
We got black and white.
I got it on my laptop.
So that's the first cohort of students that we've been able to see through the new SAT from the 10th grade, fall assessment, the fall of their junior year, and the spring SAT of their senior year. And what we just wanted to highlight with that is the growth that you can see every time they've taken that assessment. So the overall growth from fall to fall was 51 points, and that's again on average. And then the growth from the fall to spring, which I would consider drastic, was 41 points. So that's a tremendous amount of growth for our students on average. Unfortunately, what's the negative piece of the scores and those score reports is that we're falling towards the bottom end of some of the schools in the DERG and our overall performance. But I wanted to highlight this because what this supports is that the curriculum is working right now, our students are growing, and I'm less concerned with us being compared elsewhere if I know that our students are growing.
Right.
And the same, you can see the same thing on the STAR assessment, the same thing on our PSATs. You can see the same things academically. We have a tremendous number of students challenging themselves and taking AP courses, which is fantastic. And really, Mr. Daly and Mrs. Holt are not here because they're at the Lyman Hall Sheehan soccer doubleheader. And for safety and security, they are much better utilized there than here tonight. And really, Mr. Daly has done a tremendous job looking at all of our AP potential reports, which is what we get from all of our students every time they take a PSAT. And right now, we have 9th, 10th, and 11th graders taking PSATs. So we get a tremendous amount of data and recommendations from the levels that they demonstrate on those tests and assessments.
3 years?
3 years.
3 years. Wow.
Yeah, it's really been a tremendous help, especially when it comes to course recommendations. I think initially when I started at Lyman Hall, if you came in at a specific level course, you graduated with that level. And now we're able to look at freshman scores almost immediately with STAR and the PSAT data because it comes in within a week of the assessment. And we can really look at those kids that are maybe misplaced. You know, STAR is the best. Every year we identify a kid who's maybe in a general level course and reading at a 12th grade level. And what happens there is those students are behaviorally placed, and we are then able to move those students to the proper academic level and really challenge them to perform at their.
The PSATs are not diagnostic at all, are they really? I mean, it's been a long time since I've taken PSATs.
Yeah, so the PSATs have a lot of useful data that we can have. I mean, they target specific skills. You get AP potential from SATs and PSATs. So it'll recommend and give you a good general understanding of where that student is. And our department heads can dig deeper into the SAT specifically and really target some of those key skills so that we know, just take algebra, for example. When we're teaching algebra, if we're missing kind of that heart of algebra, which is a huge piece on the SAT, it would allow all of our math professionals to really look at our curriculum and see if we are attacking it and approaching it the right way. So it breaks it down into kind of individual skill sets, and that's just a matter of really digging deep into the data, just like on the STAR assessment.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Everybody.
Welcome.
Principal of Sheehan High School. This is Justin Marciano, and I am used to going last. Timetable-wise, and baby talking about 6 weeks old here at Wallingford. So it's been a wonderful 6 weeks. It's a great school district and a great school, and I'm thrilled to be here. So anyway, looking at our school background, we serve about 800 students, obviously 9 through 12. I wanted to focus on our school counseling department because they provide such a wide array of school counseling services to prepare our students to become college and career ready through Naviance, through student success plans. They're collaboratively developing those with students, with parents, and with, of course, their school counselors. And students and families have access to online resources that, you know, just 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, they didn't. And obviously, our job is to prepare them for college and career, and that is such a stress, and our school counseling program does a magnificent job doing that. Our overall school climate surveys were very positive this year. However, I still want to focus on that school climate surveys, particularly when it comes to school connectedness, which we'll get into a little bit later. Overall standardized assessments results, we've seen some growth in our PSAT results as well. Our goals this year, they really focused, there they are specifically, but as Joe referred to as well, we've narrowed our school improvement goals to literacy and to numeracy in order to enable us to focus on those important skills for college and career readiness. And so And that's in a manner that involves all content areas. So we chose, of course, literacy and numeracy, just as Joe mentioned, because they touch upon all content areas. You can't really teach that science book, as he mentioned, without looking at that literacy and mathematical skills as well. So that's the critical piece for us. And of course, that then can tie to teachers' SLOs and IAGDs across all content areas. So that's why we focused on those. The MTS School Improvement Plan was developed through data analysis, and our improvement goals involve a collaborative effort of engaging the entire school, in that school improvement process. Our student learning indicators were specifically developed based on data in areas for literacy and numeracy, and the analysis of that data focuses on student achievement results. On common, what we focus on, our areas for our data are common department and district rubrics, as well as STAR data, PSAT data, and SAT data. And so those are our areas. When it comes to those common rubrics, what we're talking about there, actually let me switch to school climate as well. That was another one of our goals. So our school climate goal is we focus not on just one particular indicator. We were very concerned with school connectedness, and we worked with our faculty to go through all of our school climate data results. We picked those within the parent survey and within the student surveys that were most connected to school connectedness. Sorry for the connected. But then we are focusing on those particular indicators. So there's about 4 in each for parents and students, and we want to see growth in both of those areas. Students reporting that they're going to be connected and more engaged with their school and their school community. And so we will be reaching out to students and to parents, even though it's an off year for school climate. We will be reaching out to gather some information just on those specific indicators, and that was a great collaborative effort with our teachers as well. So we do have our SRBI is connecting to our school climate, of course. I just mentioned we want to go over those indicators with parents and students. Also, our SRBI committee. We do have an SRBI committee. It's made up of about 5 teachers, as well as our school psychologist. I'm on that committee as well. Hopefully when we are getting a social worker for half-time social worker position, so we're looking to incorporate that person into our SRBI committee as well. And then from that, I also want to create school improvement teams as well, student assistance teams as well, but we'll get a little bit into that a little further as well. So Mr. Marciano and I are going to kind of tag team this slide together. So Mr. Marciano, if you want to jump in here at any point.
You want to start?
Sure,
All
go
right.
ahead.
So, if you're going to hear a lot of the same things that went over with Joe from Lyman Hall, but we're measuring our student outcomes through common and department rubrics, through the use of STAR, both reading and math, our PSAT and our SAT data, which is showing phenomenal results. I know that, in terms of when you look at the state and those different, the different comments that are made about the overall results in the state, our students, if you look at the chart that's in the presentation, from 16 to last year's SAT grew about 100 points, which is a phenomenal growth. We're looking at the school climate data, and then again attendance and discipline data that we focus on that every year. Our school counseling office actually gets once a month gets emails about attendance in terms of our students that we're concerned about. They do some background work, some legwork, and they report that back to Mr. Dirksen and myself, in which we start to meet with those students, contact those families, reach out to figure out what may be going on, what's impeding ability to get to school. This year we're also going to be looking really at students' tardiness to school, particularly to period 1. And in terms of teacher goals, how we're going to measure those, SLOs and IAGDs, like everybody has mentioned, alignment between units and goals, so making sure that the learning targets that are on the board are the things that are going to be measured in the classrooms. I know when I've walked into classrooms already and had conversations with students and with teachers, the question is, you see the learning target on the board, and I'm always asking kids, what are you guys doing at the end of class? Do you know what you're doing at the end of class to have this measured? So focusing on that, and then the use of department rubrics and the district rubrics to ensure consistency, which is key this year too. In terms of the community, parent participation in PTAC is going to be a focus in terms of bringing back Sheehan's PTAC. It had a decline in the last couple of years, so our focus is going to be to communicate with parents, to encourage them to come back, reach out personally to some groups to try to get them to attend, really just to come and attend. Like Joe mentioned, there are so many things that our parents are involved in at the high school level. It does become difficult. However, you know, it's just trying to, and I think if you get a personal invite, it does mean more. So weekly communications, Enzo here is sending out weekly updates to parents now, so they're not getting the monthly newsletter, so they're getting weekly updates. And then, you know, the feedback on the school climate indicators will be useful. We're going to reach out, I think, sometime midpoint this year to just little dipstick to ask 2 questions really about school climate, because we're not going to do the climate survey, to get feedback from students and from parents to gather that data so we can report back out on that at the end of the school year.
Just going to touch upon what Mr. Marciano spoke about, that attendance data and behavior data that they're working with students. So I wanted to formalize that a little bit more this year. So that's where we're going to create 2 student assistance teams, and it's going to be broken alphabetically with the 2 assistant principals, so the first half of the alphabet and the second half of the alphabet. So what I'm looking to do is working with the assistant principals, school counselors, and school social workers, and having those as bi-weekly meetings every other week, with one student assistance team meets for about a 40, you know, about half a block, and then the other student assistance team will also meet for a half a block. So it'll be the assistant principals, and I'm going to be part of those meetings, especially in the beginning parts as well, with the school counselors and the new school social worker, and we'll be really focusing on that attendance data and that behavioral data. I think the attendance data will be even more revealing, and that's for multiple purposes. It's A, to get kids to come to school, and to not be tardy, and make sure that they're coming to school for a full day if they're absent all day. And it gets parents involved as well. When you reach out to parents and you're inviting them in for those meetings as well, I think that's very important. So we're going to really focus on that student assistance team piece to support students, not only academically, but of course, you know, socially and emotionally. A lot of times you have those meetings with students and with parents, and you find out so much more about what's going on with the families, and you're able to offer those supports, whether they're, you know, supports within the school, or you can possibly refer them to outside agencies, and potentially with the Human Services Department within Wallingford. And I think that'll be a key piece as well, is building that relationship with Human Services as well. So that's certainly a focus that I want to push this year as well.
And then just real quick, a couple of key points. We are continuing to focus. We did shrink down, and I don't know if Lyman Hall did, our office hours from 45 minutes to 30 minutes. That was a decision we made last year. One being, after about 30 minutes, we started to see a drop-off dramatically of the number of students actually engaging in makeup work or academic work. So we are focused it down to 30 minutes. And you know, we've had our first office hours recently, so the goal is going to be how can we continue to encourage teachers to utilize that time effectively, but also students. What I am noticing, and I've collected data over the last year and continue to do so, what we are noticing is that our upper level students are utilizing that time very well, but the students that we need to utilize that time the most are not making the best choices. So trying to find out the best ways to encourage that usage of time much more effectively than the way it's being used right now. And then also the same goes for the PLG time. Going to be working with department chairs in particular to make sure that the PLG time is being used effectively. We are going around and joining in and popping in on our PLGs just to see the conversations they're engaging in, and focusing some of the discussions. I know, just being the CT liaison, the department liaison, their conversations have been focused specifically around assessments and what they're doing in the classroom to measure skills, really a change in thinking for them. They're used to a lot of project-based, like they completed the project so they got a grade, as opposed to what are the skills that you are measuring throughout that project. So a lot of conversation around that, so each department kind of splitting that up and utilizing that time effectively.
I just want to ask you, you just made a comment about your older students are making better choices as far as the office hours.
By upper level, I didn't mean older. I meant like our AP and honors level students.
Sorry.
Utilize,
Okay.
yeah, so that was that's my fault. Yeah,
right.
Some of our older students are too, yes. But overall, it is our
Your
predominantly
higher
our
achievers.
AP students. So last year, I put out a survey to the kids and said, do you find this time useful? And
Okay.
a lot of the responses that I got back were from our AP and honors level students who said, you can't take it away. We love this time. We need it. And then a lot of other students that said, you know, I don't really need it. So we're really looking at how do we help. We see the importance of it. It's just a matter of how do we encourage more effective use of that time for specific groups of students.
I was going to ask, Lyman Hall's doing the Freshman Academy. I don't know if you're doing it at Sheehan, but when you're talking about connectedness, are you talking to them or are they just piloting that program, I suppose? I don't know. What are you doing to help that connectedness for especially our freshmen?
Part of that is an advisory. We're also boosting our advisory program. So the PD committee that we had has been, in effect for a few years. I've also added to them. I've been meeting with them every 2 weeks. Well, we're about to have our second meeting, but we're going to add to that an advisory component to help develop those advisory lessons to have those school connectedness types of activities. So that's going to be a big focus, as well as boosting our advisory program. It was kind of, I think, not as much of a collaborative effort to boost that program as I'd like it to be. So it's certainly a focus area.
Okay,
as
thank
well.
you.
Yep.
Any questions? Dr. Menza?
I don't have a question, but could I?
A comment?
Yes.
Good.
All right, I just want to say before it gets any later, that first of all, thank you to all the administrators for your hard work. I think that we oftentimes can get focused on the minutia of one assessment, one newspaper article, one report, but we don't take time, and tonight was just a small piece, and you guys could have all taken all of tonight individually to really celebrate the hard work that you're doing with all of your staff members. And that goes for your teachers, your paraeducators, your nurses. You heard so many different resources in your schools being highlighted, but it takes good leaders to do that. So I just want to thank all of you for your very, very hard work that you do on a daily basis, because I know you're not happy, and we're not happy all the time with how we perform. However, it's not because you're not trying. It's certainly, you're trying so very, very hard, and all of your teachers in all of your classrooms, working with them, your social workers, your psychologists, your library media specialists. We heard about all of those different positions. You're working so very, very hard. Our students are coming to us with different opportunities for growth than they might have come even 2 years ago or even last year. And we're all dealing with that. We're flexing, we're being as agile as possible to deal with that. And I just thank you for your hard work, and I truly appreciate it. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank Ms. Latour for her hard work in pulling together the new template and really working with everyone. It was a pleasure reading each of these with her together at the same desk, at the same table, and then providing the feedback. But I do want to thank Ms. Latour for her guidance and leadership as well. It's truly a team effort. So just needed to say that. If you have more questions, you can ask, but I didn't want to let that go without saying thank you and really sharing my gratitude to all of you. And hopefully it would be conveyed to you as you share these with your teachers as well as your families. So thank you.
So just real quick to echo Joe's sentiment, Officer Bauer has been such a wonderful resource. So I would be remiss for not mentioning that. I didn't realize the impact she would have immediately, but in going upstairs to visit her one day when she came in, it was about a week into school, and she had about 6 names written on this whiteboard that's in her office. And so I was asking her about it, and these were 6 kids that within that week had already gone to her on their own to just have conversations. And there were 6 students that I was like, I am so glad those are 6 kids that came to see you. So she's been a wonderful addition, has been able to engage with students, has been around the building. So looking forward to hopefully encouraging more time in the building.
And just to go along with that, as the board knows, because I shared with you the document that we agreed with the town, and I met with the administrators, we've identified data points, and actually the police brought to us the data points that they want to collect. So most likely we're looking at probably late November, early December that we'll bring those back to the board, have Officer Bauer, have Officer Cadet, have Sergeant Blythe come to a meeting and share what they've seen, because while we can make a request for more time, we all know that the decision ultimately lies with the mayor and with the police chief, and being able to actualize that in his own budget. So we need to be very proactive. The idea is that we could bring that data to all of you, and then if you recommend, which I would suggest you do, that we bring that then to the town council prior to the budget process occurring for the town. And we all know that their process is about 6 weeks after ours is, so we have time to do that. But I do concur with all the administration at the high school level, and they are getting down to the middle schools too. But that time has been very value added.
All right, we concluded with the presentations? Okay. Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to make a comment. I want to express my appreciation to each of you for this school improvement plan and not a test score improvement plan, because our kids are a lot more than just a test score. And that's just a point in time, and but that's what always seems to get published in the newspaper is the test scores. And there's so much more to what goes into educating our kids. And this was a great presentation. Thank you very, very much.
And I mean, I want to agree. I love every single one of you talked about the whole child. I thought that was awesome. Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, then it's time for public comment. Oh, wait a minute.
As
Sorry.
a point of order, if we could go back to the acceptance of minutes.
You still don't have consensus.
The issue.
Yeah, we do.
Well, you have.
Who are here?
Yeah.
Is that the problem?
Go ahead.
What we could do is let's just make a mental note or write it down, and we could add it to the
Yes.
operations meeting. Yeah.
Right, just so we
Just
don't
for
forget
clerical
it.
housekeeping.
Yes.
Gotcha. No, I forgot that there's people, so.
Okay.
No worries.
All right, so any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I think we are adjourned.